Call to order the regular board meeting of Charter Township of Chesterfield, July 13th, 2021. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Clerk Berry, would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Kirsten.
Present.
Treasurer Elliott.
Here.
Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Joseph.
Here.
Trustee DeMink.
Here.
Trustee Vosberg.
Here.
Clerk Berry is here.
Presentations. Treasurer Elliott, item number 4, please.
Yes. So the Southeast Michigan Council of Governments supports local planning through its technical
to
data
Chesterfield Township
and intergovernmental resources. The work SEMCOG does improves the quality of the region's water, makes the transportation system safer and more efficient, revitalizes communities, and spurs economic development. So in 2017, SEMCOG began awarding the Regional Showcase Award, which you will see here in front, in recognition of projects that make a significant contribution to the vision of a connected, thriving region of small towns, dynamic urban centers, active waterfronts, diverse neighborhoods, agricultural land, park trails, and natural areas. I am proud to announce that Chesterfield Township is the 2021 recipient and the first community in Macomb County to receive the Regional Showcase Award for the Weber Paddle Park. Please turn your attention to the screen to view a video presentation.
You know, it's peaceful, it's quiet, you know, and the noise and stress of life can sometimes disappear.
You know, I think it gives
Creating access to the many waterways have been a goal at Chesterfield Township for many years. We were fortunate to have the Weber family donate this land and the financial support from the Michigan Department of Natural Resources and the Chesterfield Township Board to bring us to development. There were many hands throughout the state and within Macomb County who touched this project in helping us make it a reality. Individuals to organizations and all the way to the county seat. Without their drive, we wouldn't have had the beauty you see today. The vision was brought to life with the concept of an adaptable kayak and fishing park. It is still early in this park's first fully open season, and we have already had hundreds of visitors. Looking ahead, we plan to add a covered picnic shelter and permanent bathrooms. The park access has created opportunities that have increased the amount of usable public fishing areas for the local fishing crowd. I'm not sure that you will catch the largest fish in the river here, but you will certainly have a serene break from a busy life and a chance to spend some time with our natural waterfront. The township is continuing to develop and increase community connectivity in both pathways and waterways. The Weber Paddle Park is one small piece in the trailway connectivity puzzle we are putting together in accordance with the township's and county's recreation master plan. The park creates an access point to the Salt River that is accessible to all. This new Weber Paddle Park creates a place where you can quietly reconnect with nature, fish directly from the shore, or enter calm waters of the river. The more experienced kayakers may choose to head into the deeper, rougher waters of Lake St. Clair, or one can go the opposite direction and follow the peaceful passage along the Salt River, exploring the native shores. Destination Brandenburg Park or 23 Mile Road, the choice is yours. We do have some work to do to maintain the shoreline with the ever-adjusting lake levels, but it's our goal to keep it natural and unique to our community. Our township hopes for this local park to remain as peaceful as it is today. We plan to host several small-scale programs here, including another kids fishing event, family kayaking, paddle boarding, community picnics, and a whole lot more. There is much to do, and as you can see, the park is bursting with beauty. It's the perfect setting for small, intimate groups, fishing, and paddling. Individuals can relax, read a book, and breathe in the fresh air. There's plenty more to see along the waterfront in Chesterfield Township, so stay tuned.
Thank you. With that being said, Mr. Dick Birmingham, would you like to step forward for us, please? On behalf of Chesterfield Township, Trustee Vosper, do you want to add anything to this in SEMCOG?
I would, from here, thank you, Mr. Birmingham, for being here to receive this. I think years ago, I remember having a meeting with you on behalf of Mr. Weber regarding, it was a dream then at that point, for a piece of property in the township. And from that, many other organizations came together to make it happen for what it is today. So thank you.
Did you want to address the display up front? I didn't mean to interrupt you.
So the display up front is the beautiful award that we will be able to put out here in front. And thank you for that donation. I remember working with Trustee Vosberg back then and continue to work with you going forward as the representative for SEMCOG. Thank you.
Thank you. So on behalf of Chesterfield Township, we'd like to present to you and the Weber Foundation for Mr. and Mrs. Weber our recognition for the kind donations and service for the Weber Paddle Park.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is the easy part. The Webers would love to have been here. It's unfortunate that they can't. They're not getting around very well due to health complications. But he was thrilled when I told him that this was going to happen, and he's thrilled with what this group has done, this body of government, to make things happen in this township. The Splash Park has been a tremendous success. The movement of the church into the village from the park up the street was a great additive to the township. And, there's a couple that could live anywhere that they want, basically. They have the means to go anywhere they want. They love Chesterfield, and they love being a part of it, and they love being able to do what they can do when the need arises. So on behalf of the Webers, I thank you, and we look forward to helping as much as we can in the future. Thanks a lot. Congratulations. Thank you.
Item 5, department reports. Trustee Domingue.
My report's from Leisure Services. Bring your lawn chairs, blankets, snacks, and gather at the Chesterfield Township offices for our next outdoor summer movie night on Tuesday, July 20th at 7:30 p.m. We'll be watching Ugly Dolls on the grounds of the Historical Village. Arrive early and catch up with the Leisure Services, the Chesterfield Library, and the Historical Society by participating in simple games and giveaways. Next, pickleball fans, from sunrise to sunset, the redesigned resurfaced sports court are now open at Brandenburg Park. Come play with us and enjoy the sun, sport, and lakefront breezes. 3 newly designed pickleball courts, 1 hybrid court, and 4 basketball hoops are awaiting your arrival. Bring your gear, $5 for park entry. And finally, the summer concert series is finally here. Help us welcome Dr. Jimmy and Mr. Jim to Chesterfield Township for some classic rock on Friday, July 16th at the Township Municipal Offices at 6:30 p.m. We appreciate the generous support of the Chesterfield Township Board and our presenting sponsor, Genesis Credit Union, and their contributions that make cost-free community concert possible. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you, Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Supervisor Kirsten. And it's got a very nice ring to it. If I could just bring the board and public up to date regarding the Public Safety Department. Trustee Anderson and I, as the public safety liaisons, we've had a lot of work in the last month, obviously with the recent vacancy that was created in the Public Safety Department. Our Public Safety Director is, of course, our supervisor, and so there's been a lot of discussion within both the fire and police departments about continuity of leadership and structure and the stability over there. One of the things that happened most recently, and we'll hear more about it this summer, is during the accreditation process that we underwent a few months back. The area of command structure was put in place, and with that organization, obviously both police and soon-to-be fire, there are a number of policies and procedures that have to be looked at, and during that accreditation process, one of those was your chain of command. And in paramilitary style management, that is critical, and the command structure with the existing personnel put forth certain criteria that incorporated years of service, experience, and we have two captains, both Captain Franks and Captain McNair, very similar backgrounds, education level, different certifications and so forth. As the criteria was applied, Captain Franks was listed in the org chart as our number 2, based on his bit more experience, I believe was the deciding factor, or maybe years with the township, I'm not sure. But at any rate, Captain Franks, according to the command structure, becomes number 2. When you are elevated to our township supervisor, the decision was made fairly easily following the accreditation and the internal structure for Captain Franks, who was just recently named our interim police chief. So the command structure as it sits right now, even though we are a public safety and we had a public safety director, we have Chief Miller, who will preside over the day-to-day operations of the fire operation, and now Police Chief Franks, who will handle all the duties in the police department. The difficulty came in, and unfortunately we had one of the really ugliest weekends I think we've had in maybe the township history, and that involves 2 apparent homicides on the same weekend. Additionally, we had some other, on a normal weekend it would have been busy, but we had these very high-profile cases, and the issue that was discussed at great length was not having the ability to have a public safety director on the scene. There's a coordination of fire and police in an instance where you have literally, unfortunately, victims who are deceased and pronounced dead at the scene, and the coordination between police and fire was pretty clear that we were we could greatly benefit from now Supervisor Kirsten's expertise at the scene. That unfortunately was not available to us. As I understand, you resigned, and all of the elements associated with your employment as the public safety director were also surrendered. It most notably was your vehicle, an inability to really get to the scene, and that I think is something that we can correct. The liaisons, Trustee Anderson and I, as I say, we met great length with not only now Supervisor Kirsten, but both captains, Fire Chief, now Interim Police Chief Franks, had some conversations with the union stewards as well as our HR Director, Mr. Duchesne, and I will be proposing an addendum to tonight's agenda to ensure that we have the ability to utilize Supervisor Kirsten, and not saying goodbye to your public safety experience, but with the simple utilization of a vehicle which is already in the fleet, and making that part of your duties, and I appreciate your willingness to take those on, but to provide a vehicle so that we can have public safety director level oversight at the scene of some of these high-profile cases. So the last thing I will say with regard to public safety is I am very impressed and very appreciative of the work. And I don't know how many meetings we've had in the last month, but one thing that keeps coming out of it with the three men at the top of both of these organizations, Captain Franks and McNair, their dedication to the department is really just very impressive and admirable. And every meeting that we're in, they remind us of their years and years of working together and the bridge that's been built to the fire department. And so the addition of Chief Miller in the past few years has really grown our public safety, and the cooperation that exists there is just truly remarkable. And I hope the residents are comforted in knowing that even with the vacant public safety director position, we have a top-notch organization over there, and it's because of the leadership that you provide the men and women of our public safety team. So thank you. Thank you.
Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. From the election department, the special Senate election will be held on Tuesday, August the 3rd. Polls will open at 7. They will close at 8 p.m. Absentee ballots are available for that election. If you have already requested an absentee ballot but have not received it yet, please contact the clerk's office and we will make sure that we have an application on file for you. You must complete an absentee ballot request in writing, preferably through the absentee ballot application, in order to receive a ballot for that election or any other election during this cycle. So the Election Commission did meet today, and they set the public accuracy test for our election equipment for Monday, July the 26th at 11 a.m. That will be here at the Township offices. That is open to the public. You may see us test the machines. You may ask questions. You may see that all of our election equipment is tested prior to the election to ensure accurate results. So if you need a ballot, please make sure we have an application for you. If you'd like to see the equipment or have any questions about how we maintain the integrity and the maintenance of that equipment, that is also afforded to you. And lastly, from the clerk's office, if you are interested in doing some summer travel, now that COVID has passed us, hopefully, we do have passports available. We are a full-service passport agency. You may receive photos here at the Township offices. We do new applications. Renewals, however, one of the things people don't realize is that per the Department of State, renewals are now done by mail only through the U.S. Department of State. So we do not do renewals. No passport agent does renewals except for the Department of State. But any other process service, expedited services, all of that is available here at the Township offices. Appointments are not required, but you may make one if you would like by calling the clerk's office. Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Barry. Department heads. Any department head reports? Seeing none. Item 6, consent agenda. Clerk Barry.
All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Public comments on the consent agenda items are permitted. 6A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of June 22nd, 2021. Item 6B, approval of the agenda with addendum if necessary. 6C, approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department. Item 6D, approve a recommendation by the Department of Public Safety to pay an invoice in the amount of $5,037.94 to Lakeside Collision from GL number 205-340-863-000. And 6E, to approve a recommendation from the Public Safety Department to pay an invoice to install and outfit the Fire Department's new F-350 in the amount of $11,550.40 from GL number 205-340-986.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda. With the addition on the consent agenda B, approval of the agenda, I'd like an addendum 8A to authorize the Township Supervisor to utilize a public safety vehicle for Township purposes until such time as the Board appoints a new Public Safety Director.
Discussion?
I think we need a second.
Support.
Second on motion.
Support.
Trustee Anderson, discussion. Seeing no further discussion, is there still a motion to approve, or would that be motion to approve the consent agenda as read with the addendum?
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kirsten.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Regular agenda, item 7A.
Item 7A is postponed from the June 22nd, 2021 regular Township Board meeting. A recommendation by Trustee Vosberg to approve changes to APO 04, 2018 Board Rules and Procedures.
Move to approve. Support.
Motion to approve by Trustee Vosberg, support by Treasurer Elliott. Discussion? Director Duchesne.
Good evening, members of the board. Previously, I was tasked to support Trustee Vosberg and Treasurer Elliott in a review of the council's, or the board members, the Board of Trustees rules and procedures regarding meetings. Now, this is primarily, it is not only primarily, it is a discretion of the board. I've had some brief conversations with the township attorney, who has a vast amount of experience in board rules and agenda. So at this time, what I do say is I recommend it be postponed, only to give a chance for the current or the new supervisor to have a chance to review some of the aspects of our discussions that we have not had an opportunity to do. But obviously I defer that to the lead of the committee, which was originally assigned to Trustee Vosberg and Treasurer Elliott, if they wish to continue that discussion tonight. But I do recommend the new supervisor have an opportunity to review some of the articles in here, the mechanics of doing a meeting preparation, agenda, and process that are solely, certainly at the board's discretion.
Mr. Supervisor?
Trustee Vosberg, yes.
Thank you. This has been out here before in various at other meetings, and I believe our current supervisor, while he is new to serving as supervisor, has been able to see this out there. So I urge that we continue discussion on this motion. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. This, in my opinion, this APO, in particular the changes to this APO, are really tantamount to censorship. They do a great disservice, I think, to the ability for our residents to fully engage in the process. There are also some changes to the way we structure the agenda. And although I think there's probably some disagreement, and I know in talking with Director Duchesne, he's pretty thorough in his research, and while there is nothing that eliminates the board's ability to vote to censor and limit resident participation, I think it's very, very appropriate to follow the recommendation, and I believe it's an important recommendation to follow because the understanding, at least the rationale that was brought to this board and board members, was that we needed to conduct more business-like meetings. And I think there's little argument that there have been times when the debate has been less than business-like, and I shoulder a lot of the responsibility in some of those debates that have gotten very heated. But I think that there will be a natural sort of course correction given our new supervisor. And I think we discussed a lot of the things that led us to vote to appoint him unanimously, with a number of those things being his ability to bring individuals together, and certainly this board. And I think we shared that in our appointment. I believe his first meeting right out of the gate to anger residents who are deprived the ability to debate as we debate. So the biggest change in this proposed APO is that as we get through the agenda item, residents who have had no ability to engage their elected officials prior to the meeting. So if the agenda comes out on a Thursday and it takes a day or two to read over, how are they supposed to engage board members when we're here, when a lot of times we're spending the weekend getting caught up? This idea that residents have great opportunities is really not accurate. And I think the business-like climate will naturally occur with the leadership of Director Kirsten, and I think it's premature to, again, censor residents before he's had an opportunity to conduct some meetings. And let's see how they play out under what I would argue to be a more even-handed approach. There's certainly no animosity from this supervisor towards the public or towards any member of the board. So allowing residents a few minutes to speak, I think, is critical. I believe your recommendation, after having been tasked with looking at this, Mr. Duchesne, is perfectly appropriate. And I would like to make a motion to postpone this APO indefinitely.
With support.
Trustee Bosworth?
Thank you. I do not support this motion. It is, the reasons that were spoken ahead of time don't even make sense. The public has been able to look at the agenda, and in fact, two members from the public did contact me asking questions for more information about tonight's agenda. So to say they have no chance or opportunity is wrong. The other thing is, the way it's done right now is the agenda item comes up, we discuss it as a board, as the Board of Trustees, then the public comes up after we've discussed it. They bring up some other additional information that maybe is valid information. In fact, the information that I received over the weekend there's one that brought up some information that was useful information for me to consider. So when they bring it up at the last minute, it's kind of too late for us to sometimes look at it or consider it in a way that would steer the conversation. We have conversations about things, and then a member of the public comes up, and it takes us off course sometimes, and I don't appreciate that. This way, if the public comments are held at the beginning of the meeting, we hear what they are, we have some time to process, and in fact, we can get more information from department heads if we need to do that. So the reasons stated do not make sense for why we would postpone this indefinitely.
The only motion that's really up for discussion, I believe, Mr. Supervisor, is the motion to postpone indefinitely.
Correct, and that's what I'm addressing, the reason to postpone.
I see.
Trustee Anderson?
Yeah, just Trustee Vosberg's remarks are something I did catch. I think you got a good point there, that this board will discuss an agenda item ad nauseum, and there is an opportunity for a member of the public here to get up and have some comments. It's like when you go to a teacher conference and little Johnny's and his parents are talking to the math teacher about something, and you find out that Johnny's dad is a GM engineer with a PhD. He may know more than the math teacher. That happens. The public standing up here, our residents, we have expertise out here. They may enlighten this board while the debate on the agenda item is fluid, before there's a 4-3 vote or 7-0, whatever. So I think you have a point there. Yes, it is a valuable thing that we do allow a limit in time with each agenda item for members of the public to come up and make comments, to tell our residents, and there may be several hot items, or interesting items, that they didn't get a chance to talk to all their elected people in 2 days. There might be several items, and what you're saying is, okay, Joe resident, you got 5 minutes to get up here and address everything very quickly, sit down, shut up, and let your elected officials, your representatives, vote in your best interest. Thank you.
Thank you. Treasurer Elliott.
Yes, in regards to the postponement, I think we can easily just either take a vote or not take a vote if you agree or disagree. Whether or not the changes are as dramatic as they're being made, I'm not entirely sure. So whether or not we are asking for changes, if this agenda item is asking for some changes which actually fall in line with 6 other local communities. So in Clinton Township, there's 3 minutes for comments, 3 minutes, not 5, which our agenda change would say 5 minutes at the beginning and 5 minutes at the end, 5 minutes on agenda items and 5 minutes for...
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. This is not on the APO. This is on the motion to table, and we are debating the motion now, and we have fallen off the rails. We are no longer debating a motion to table, which is the motion that has precedence on the floor. The motion to table is the motion to table indefinitely.
I'm sorry, am I being interrupted?
No, I'm asking the chair for a point of order, clarification on your
Correct. So the reason why I'm stating...
I'm sorry, I asked the chair. I asked the chair for clarification.
So the motion to postpone was made by Trustee Joseph, seconded by Trustee Anderson. So the vote will be on to postpone, and according to the current APO that's in place, it must be date certain. So that being said...
Mr. Supervisor, if I may,
Please.
I'd like to amend my motion. This APO has been marked up so many times, I'm having a difficult time following what read and what's lined out. I would like to clarify my motion, and I would like to make a motion to table indefinitely, and according to our current APO, the motion to table indefinitely can only be brought back to the board with a support of 2/3 of the board. So my motion, if I may, is to table, according to our current APO, to lay on the table, which is a motion to delay the discussion of the motion until an indefinite time, and would ask that that be supported.
Continued support.
So again, I'm being advised that it has to be tabled to a certain date.
If I could, the difference between a postponement and to lay on the table, when you table an item, it is to be delayed until later in that meeting, not to another meeting. A postponement is to another meeting, and we do require a date certain. You can make a motion to withdraw the item entirely, and that would accomplish the postponement indefinitely, and it can be brought back at any time.
All right. If I may, Mr. Supervisor, I'll amend again. I think it kind of speaks to the Frankenstein of this APO. We have 4 versions since I've been on this board. I would like to make a motion, in essence, then a motion to withdraw is a motion to postpone indefinitely. They are fairly equivalent, as I understand the clerk's definition. So I would like to make a motion to withdraw the agenda item.
There's a motion to withdraw the agenda item. Is there support?
Support.
Trustee Anderson, support. Clerk Barry?
If there's no further discussion, I'll call the roll, Mr. Supervisor. Thank you. Trustee Joseph?
Aye.
Trustee Anderson?
Aye.
Trustee Demink?
No.
Trustee Vosberg?
No?
Treasurer Elliott?
No.
Supervisor Kirsten?
Aye.
Clerk Berry, no.
Motion to withdraw fails. Principal motion was still on the floor. Is there support for the principal motion? Motion to approve the, principal motion to approve the APO as originally stated. Clerk Berry, would you call the roll?
Mr. Supervisor, I also have a comment as well on the principal
Please.
item. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for bearing with me. If I get a little quiet here, I'm actually sick tonight, and so I'm trying to hold the voice as much as I can. I was hoping we could vote on this tonight so that we can get some changes made that I believe need to be made. We can always bring it back at another time if we need to make additional changes that can be brought up again. So, but one of the changes that I believe does need to be made, and I've been on the board now for, it's my third term, so almost 9 years and lots of meetings, and one of the things that I've noticed is while I want to give the public every opportunity to speak, they should have an opportunity to speak. When I was a member of the public, I know I appreciate the opportunity to speak. However, what I have found from a practical standpoint, being a member of the board, is once the board begins to have discussion on every single agenda item, it becomes problematic when you have public comment on every single agenda item, and it tends to make it more difficult for the discussion here at the board. And as Trustee Vosberg said, just some logistics, you know, just ready to make a vote, and then we have comment, and then we're going back again, and it kind of delays things. I do believe the public should be given the opportunity to speak at the beginning of the meeting on any agenda item they would like. So if there are 4 or 5 agenda items they'd like to speak on, they can have their notes prepared and be given ample time at the beginning of the meeting to make their comments on every agenda item, so that they can be heard and so that we can hear them earlier in the discussion, so that when we do go to discuss it as a board, we have that public input to consider at that time. So I would support public comment on any agenda item at the beginning of the meeting, and I would also support public comment on any issue or any item at the end of the meeting. So 3 minutes at the beginning of the meeting and 3 minutes at the end of the meeting. I would be comfortable with that. I would also be comfortable with 5 minutes at the beginning of the meeting to give the public the opportunity to speak on anything they would like. Just like we do now, but we have it at the end. I'd like to see that moved up to the beginning so that the board does have the opportunity to consider what the public's comments are. So that would be my preference. What I would like to see changed is the every single item. I think that becomes problematic. I think we can accomplish the same goal of considering public input by giving the opportunity at the beginning of the meeting. So either one of those options I'm okay with. But one of the other items in the APO, one of the changes that I do not support, and I would like the board to consider striking out if it is approved, and that is the management of the agenda items, or the management of the agenda. The agenda software that we use is a specialized software that requires additional training. Clerk Nyes is very proficient with it, and it would just, again, be problematic from a practical standpoint to have the supervisor. I think the APO calls for the supervisor to dictate the order and so forth. But the reality is when agenda items come in, and they come in throughout, you know, a 2 or 3 week period to us, that, you know, sometimes we have to manage that agenda at the last minute. And I think it would be problematic not only for our office, for the public to be notified appropriately and so forth, but it'd also be problematic from the supervisor's office to have to worry about doing that. And that's one of the functions that we take care of, so that the supervisor or any other board member doesn't have to do that. That's one of our responsibilities. So I believe it would be problematic to make that particular change. So I would be looking for 2 changes in this that this APO may address. One is I'd like the public comment either split up the way that suggested, or to have the particular area about the agenda items. I would like that unchanged. The change that's proposed, I would like that unchanged. Thank you.
Thank you. Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. So I did, after the comments of the last board meeting, I did do some homework. So the changes, to summarize for everyone, are to add the supervisor to approval, which is what Clerk Barry just referenced, allowed a board member to add an item to the agenda without the support of any other board member. Currently, it says that you need 2 board members to add an item. Approval of the agenda would move up to after the roll call, and that is pretty standard practice. There would be 5 minutes of public comments on all agenda items at the beginning and 5 minutes of public comments at the end of the meeting. Public comments are to avoid inappropriate behavior, and in that language is clarified. And then there's clarity of what proclamations, tributes, tabling, amend, and postpone are, because we needed some clarity in that space. So I also compared that to other communities. So in Clinton Township, they have 3 minutes of comments on each agenda item, but those agenda items must be germane. There's a 3-minute time limit for ending at the ending of the meeting for non-agenda public comments. Harrison Township, there's 3 minutes for comments on agenda items, but they also must be germane. 3 minutes for the ending at the ending for non-agenda items. Macomb Township, 3 minutes at the beginning on all agenda items, with response from a chair or board member will run against the participants' allotted time. So that means that if there's a response, that 3 minutes, if there's a response from the board member, that will be on the speaker's time. There is also in Macomb Township 3 minutes at the end on non-agenda items. Richmond Township, very small township north of us. 3 minutes are allotted at the beginning on agenda items and 3 minutes at the end on non-agenda items. Shelby Township has 3 minutes at the beginning on all agenda items and 3 minutes at the end on non-agenda items. Shelby Township has an interesting thing where they do not allow employee names to be used, but they reference employee IDs. This is to protect the employees from political attacks or political manipulation, which I actually see a lot of value in. Washington Township has 3 minutes at the beginning for agenda items and 3 minutes at the end for non-agenda items. So the changes here from 5 minutes on every agenda item to 5 minutes at the beginning and the end, and the professionalism that has been continually brought up here at this board. Maybe we could, the reason why Trustee Vosberg, I believe, has brought this to the board is to try to bring it to a more professional discussion during agenda items and allowing 5 minutes, which was much more generous than our neighboring communities at the beginning to address the agenda items. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you, Treasurer Elliott. I'll open it up to the public for comments.
Good evening, Township Board and residents. My name is John Spica. This is an overt attempt by Trustee Vosberg to stop dissent. What's next, Trustee Vosberg? Are we going to start jailing people because you don't agree with what they have to say at the podium? This is the people's house. This is an attack of our democratic values. Are you afraid of me, John Spica, or is it Paul LaFata or Joe Kadich that you're afraid of? Or maybe any other resident that comes to the people's house and asks questions or makes comments at the podium that we own. Trustee Vosberg, you're afraid of hearing the truth. You seem to forget, Trustee Vosberg, this is our house, the people's house, and the seat you're sitting in is temporary. You, along with every other elected official, work for us, the people, the residents of Chesterfield Township. Trustee Vosberg, your attempt to change the board rules and silence the residents of Chesterfield is an overreach and a power grab. You have overstepped your boundaries by attempting to silence the residents of Chesterfield on agenda items. Before a resident can speak on an agenda item, they need to hear the discussion by the board on the item so he or she can speak on the facts of what was said and presented versus what might be said or implied. You can't comment on an agenda item till you hear what is said and what is permitted. You have tried this sort of power grab in the past. This is your second attempt. You call yourself a Republican, and shame on you. I call you a traitor to this township and the residents for what you're trying to pass and change. I believe in the Constitution, the First Amendment, which protects freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and freedom of assembly, and the right to petition the government. As an elected official, you're obligated to listen and hear the concerns of the residents, not silence them. This move you're attempting to make is what an authoritarian government does to its people. It's a China move. This is not what we as Americans or what democracy stands for. Why did you run for office if you don't believe in the Constitution? Why did you run for office if you didn't want to hear feedback from the resident, whether it's good or bad? I welcome feedback, good or bad, from the residents. I believe in democracy and I believe in the Constitution. What you're trying to do by silencing the residents goes to prove you don't believe in the Constitution or democracy, and anyone that supports this agenda item doesn't believe in the Constitution and should not be holding public office and should resign immediately. I will make sure to make it a point to let the residents of Chesterfield know who voted to silence their vote at the podium at the People's House. Thank you.
Paul Lafata, 48055 Malin Drive. First of all, this is Chesterfield Township. It's not Shelby Township, it's not Harrison, it's not any other township. It's Chesterfield Township. I've invested 47 years of my life in Chesterfield Township, and I want Chesterfield Township to be better than any of those other townships that you mentioned. And what happens with agenda items is, on agenda items, millions of dollars of taxpayers' money is spent at every board meeting just about. And having no say before the agenda discussion by the presenter or the board members lacks any opportunity to gain the knowledge of what's actually being presented. What you're doing is you're actually censoring the residents from the full knowledge and impact prior to the agenda being submitted. It is censorship. It's not being transparent because you're holding back. You're holding back. And in the past, what happens when a resident asks a question or puts some facts out there, they really don't get an answer. What happens is you usually got, I'm extremely confident, or best practices, but you never got any real data for actual cost. What's the Weber Paddle Park going to cost, for instance? What's it going to cost for Brandenburg Park? And for a certain, what's the operational cost going to be for Brandenburg Park or the Weber Paddle Park that's going to be a periodic annual cost to the residents? These things never get answered. And what happens is when somebody asks a question or presents some facts saying that, well, this doesn't look like it's being in the budget, it's being accused of bringing toxic information to the township board. And most of the time the information is nothing different than what is in the township budget, or what's in a project definition, what's in a project cost, the invoices that were reviewed and questioned. And what you're doing is you're taking all of that away from the residents by trying to silence them, which means that you really don't want any checks and balances in the township. You want to take that all away and you want to give it to the township board. At that point in time, if this passes, it's really stupid. There's no sense to attend a future board meeting and waste 3 hours to be able to talk at the end, because only at the end are you going to understand what happened. And at the end, after all of the agenda items are either approved or denied, it's too late. So basically, you're telling the residents that don't even bother coming to the board meetings because we don't want your, we don't want your ideas, we don't want your questions, we don't want your suggestions. You're just telling them, just stay home. Thank you.
Rick Boylan. Interesting conversations. First off, Treasurer Elliott, I don't care what other townships do. This is my township. For you to even try and eliminate any less is very distressing. I look at this as another attempt to stifle freedom of speech, and I'll get to that reason in a minute. Flat out, I'd like to see this proposal totally rejected because it's flawed in many areas. Final approval of this proposed agenda and the order of business of items submitted for consideration shall be approved by the Township Supervisor prior to publishing. That speaks of despot. And I think that some of you can remember the past two regimes, the supervisor had control of the agenda, and the people out here, we only know what one individual really wanted you to talk about or listen to. I think it should be done by a compromise. I think you should all have an input on what goes on the agenda because every one of you have different interests. And I think you should respect that every one of us have different interests. To put that whole thing in one person's hands, no, that's not the way we do things in America. And as far as being businesslike and being maybe taken off course, maybe y'all need to read a little bit more history. Politics is messy. It's messy all over the world. I don't know if any of you ever traveled anywhere, but I've been places where they get physically violent at meetings. You guys are upset because somebody may hurt your feelings a little bit. Well, either toughen up or find a new career field. Now, boy, these people are crazy. It says here, any board member desiring to place a matter on the agenda, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, what is crossed out is representative of township committees, boards or commissions or citizens with support of not less than 2 board members. Now, I know that works because I've done that a couple times. So my question is, apparently, any board member can decide to put something on the agenda for proper documentation. Me as a citizen, does that mean I only have to go to one of you now and give you information? It doesn't say that here. See, I think this needs to be a little bit more rewritten to make it more English. And in this case, I will have to agree with Trustee Joseph. It is very convoluted and hard to read. And I'm pretty good at English. I really went to school and everything. But when I read this 4 or 5 times and I'm still trying to struggle, most people aren't going to take that effort. And I think that's what you're relying on, that people won't put in the effort to understand what you're really trying to do. Now, you nicely give the public comments 5 minutes, 5, early in the game, which is not a bad thing. I appreciate that, except let's think about this for a minute. Then you look at this new list of items that you put in here. I won't read them. You got the red lines in front of you. I'm not going to bore the public with this stuff. But then you get down to where you finally get to the regular agenda. Now, I think that somebody is putting an awful lot of trust in your people's recall. Either you are really, really good at memory, you're taking copious notes, which I have observed over the years. Some of the members up here do take notes, which I think is a good thing. And some of you sit there like hogs looking at a wristwatch, which I don't even know if you're engaged. The point being is that by the time we get to the agenda items, will you remember anything that somebody said out here on the floor? And the other question about that is, let's say I want to talk on 2 agenda items. Now, do I get 10 minutes or do I get 5? If I get to 5, that means I got to do it each one in 2.5 minutes. And I have to tell you, I presume, that I've switched topics, so you're staying with me.
30 seconds left.
Sir?
30 seconds left.
Okay. Well, you know what? I got a lot more to say. It needs to be redone, and I hope you vote it down. Thank you.
Michelle Wilson Merriweather, 52860 Muirfield Drive. And I just wanted to take a moment to speak to what's on the floor. I have a degree in journalism. I've spent time working for the press, and what we are trying to do right now is suppress free speech. At the end of the day, where I come from in my neighborhood, if you don't like what somebody's saying to you, you take it to the person, but you don't punish everybody. We are not Clinton Township, we are not Shelby, we are not Harrison, and until we start to act like them, look like them, and be the same type of mix-up and focus on the same things, and yes, I've sat in their meetings, and I know members of their council and board, then you can't compare Chesterfield, because Chesterfield has a long way to go. And I got a lot to say about everything that comes up on the agenda. And I've gotten to a certain age, well, if I don't say it at that time, I might forget. So I need to say it at that time. But if you have an issue with somebody, you take it to them. Now, I'm going to say this nicely because he and I got it. We okay. Mr. Joseph and I, we come at each other like crazy. We sure do. We had issues with each other, but at the end of the day, we respect each other. If I got a problem with him, I go to him. He got one with me, he comes to me. Don't do this. It is going backwards. Now, I can't agree with the fact, being a person that is constantly personally attacked for whatever, I'm good with it. But at the end of the day, I don't believe that a lot of times your name should be made public. That I can't agree with. Because when we get to the point where we start threatening your homes and you feel like you're afraid to go home, which I know some of you on the board have had threats, I think that is wrong. So I am totally against putting any kind of name, so I'm with that. I'm in full support of removing that. If it's about the person's name being published, I can do that. But let's not do this, and at the end of the day, saying that the supervisor has final say. No, the people have final say. The supervisor doesn't get final say on what I'm thinking. Thank you.
All right, Mike Wharton, 50393 Bauer. So I want to take everyone back to 7 years ago in the summertime. I was not living here. I was busy being off in a place called Bagram, which, if you've listened to the news recently, was America's base of operations in Afghanistan when we just left. Back then, though, I would volunteer at the clinic there, and I had the opportunity to talk with a lot of the translators who were working on the base, and had great conversations with them, because back then was an election year in Afghanistan. And when we had these conversations, came to notice, and I only realized this tonight, what they told me about the way they handled their tribal local governance, something like this would never fly there. And let me repeat that. Something like this would never fly in a country like Afghanistan. Now, what does that say to us here in what is supposed to be the free world? What is supposed to be the republic in which we have liberty and justice for all? Local governance is what is the critical component for the republic to stand. And in that regard, this podium is a part of civic duty for a citizen, the same as jury duty or the same as voting. It is the public forum. It is the only official component, in which case everything that is said here is a part of the official record. Everything that is said here is for a public citizen to say to the rest of their citizens, as well as the government that represents them. When you limit that, and don't get me wrong, there are limitations no matter what. We have time limits for the limits of time in general. We don't want meetings to go 8 hours. And we also have to accommodate each citizen, as well as preventing certain things like staying on issue, and also preventing things like personal insults and derogatory language. I can't go up here and do a George Carlin bit up here. But with those things being out of the way, a lot of it is self-regulation. What is vitally important is making sure that the citizenry are engaged in every issue. I've only been coming to these meetings since my second deployment, which ended back in 2017, so it's only been 3.5 years coming to these. But I can say without a doubt, I've almost always been the youngest person in the room, and there's almost never been more than 9 people in the audience. Tonight, there are 14. In a township of 48,000 people, I don't know the census data yet, but are you really saying we have to focus on constraining time? An issue like this will bring out a lot of speakers, but for the most part, barely any topic ever has a public comment or two. And most nights, there will only be 2 or 3 speakers. The only cases in which case there are more people in the audience is if if someone's being awarded or congratulated at the beginning of a meeting, or if there's a hot topic issue like the 5G tower or the fire station closing or things like that. We've only had about, 4 of those in the past 3-4 years? These things are not regular occurrences. This is a big audience tonight. If you're so concerned about time, then I'm sorry to say this, but maybe you need to limit your own time. If you're so concerned about people affecting your feelings, I'm sorry, you're the ones that ran for this office. It is your choice to be up there. This was not a communistic country where you were delegated to be in charge of the party. You were the ones that ran. And many people in this audience probably voted for you. But at the end of that, it is your responsibility to carry out the issues of governance. And that also means you have to listen to your constituents in the public. That is the point of this podium. And if you start limiting it, then where does it go from there? Thank you.
I'll bring it back up to the board. There's a motion by Trustee Vosberg, seconded by Treasurer Elliott. I'm sorry. Please.
There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm new here. Good? I'm pretty faint of voice, so forgive me. Yeah, so I'm new to this. I'm sorry, I don't know the mechanics, so I apologize for the delay here. But my name's Adam Veschek. I live at 47468 Bayside Circle West. I'm a new resident to Chesterfield, been here a little bit over a month. I attended the last council meeting here, and now this is our second one tonight. And I'm glad that we came to both because it kind of gave me a little bit of perspective on where you're coming from and what it looks like where you're headed. I can only echo the comments that I've heard tonight. This is, in my opinion, and speaking frankly, it's a terrible idea. It's a power grab by Trustee Vosberg. It's shameful. It's an attack on liberty and freedom of speech. I echo the comments of Trustee Joseph. It is just, it's just rank of corruption. And it's just, people need to be having the freedom to speak. As was said by the others, this isn't other communities or other townships. This is Chesterfield Township, and people are here for a reason. And you know, people should feel free to exercise their rights. And when you limit them the way that you are seeking to, it just totally undermines the democratic process. You know, the way it's laid out now that you seem to have a problem with, there's deliberation and discussion of the board, and then you know, the public has their time to weigh in. Well, that's called dialogue. That's healthy back and forth dialogue. You present, we see your discussion and we hear what you have to say, and then you hear what we have to say, and you're right, that may gum up the works, that may change your plans in some way, but that's good because you're getting a fresh perspective. And on the other hand, we as citizens, we hear each other give their comments, and we have new perspectives. Perhaps we learn things from each other. So this needs to be a group effort, not just, hey, we hand over the power to you and you make all the decisions for us. That is totally wrong. And to think that people are going to be able to consolidate comments on a variety of important topics to them in 5 minutes at the beginning of a meeting, and then you say, well, you get 5 minutes at the end. Well, what good is the 5 minutes at the end when you've already made all the decisions for the night? You know, and things are on the record. What good is that 5 minutes going to do? To you, it's just going to be us wagging our lips. It's just nonsense. It's like some kind of carrot you're dangling with, like something special, but it's not. It's just it's a ploy. I don't know how much more I can say about it, but you know, I come at this with a fresh perspective, so I think there's something to be said for that. And I hope you take into consideration, you know, what you've heard tonight from these citizens, because it's important and it makes sense. Thank you.
Good evening, Chris Aiello, Compass Point. I didn't know I'd be on this topic, but I work statewide in municipalities, and my pet peeve is having to wait until the end of the agenda, especially statewide, to have a comment. So I've heard some really good points from Treasurer Elliott, but I think Trustee Joseph is on point to some degree on this. Don't limit people to the end. You get everybody here that has an interest in a topic to have to sit to the end. Give everybody some time on each topic, and then maybe limit it at the end to a very short period of time, but allow everybody to participate during the topic, because that seems always, in my opinion, statewide, where everybody wants to get up and have a discussion or a talking point on an issue that somebody else just talked about. But Treasurer Elliott, you're right on a lot of that, because we know that happens inside of municipalities. But going back to the A votes, I think you're right. I think you guys need to do a little bit more compromising and discussing on it, because it is important to everybody. And the gentleman who just said this is the most I've seen. I've been out here, I don't know how many in the last year and a half, but I've never seen this participation. And there were a lot of good comments coming from individuals in the audience that, you know, it's good to see people out actually participating in this discussion. And it was done with a lot of class, and just don't shut it out to the last 5 minutes. You're going to get everyone mad. And we all know you have your own job and your own lives, and you have to get out of here. You can't be here until midnight. It's not fair to you. But so there were a lot of good points, and then I learned tonight, don't table it, but set it for agenda on quickly to the next hearing, get it to a committee, and kick it around a little bit more.
Any further comments from the public? I'll bring it back up to the board. Trustee Joseph, Trustee Vosberg, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate all the comments. Maybe not all but one. Because I do firmly believe in hearing from the public. We deserve to hear from the public. We need to, and we benefit from it when we hear from the public. There have been some mistakes that were made, issues that were said that are not true. There's, we included in here is we can speak at the beginning, the public can, and we want the public to speak at the beginning of the meeting. And we're also in here as they speak at the end of the meeting. So there's nobody's stopping anyone from speaking before the meeting or at the end of the meeting. So it's not true. It sounded like some people thought that maybe what was in here, that you could only speak at the end. That's not true. You can speak in beginning and end. And I appreciate that this did not get postponed. I wanted this to come to the floor. I wanted us to discuss it. It just kicking the can down the road doesn't help any of us. And the other thing is to say that this is I'm not quite sure how to word this, but no, we are not any other community. But I have been an elected official for 19 years now, and it's only since I've been here that the public has spoke on every single item. So it's worked very successfully in many other local governments, as was read earlier when the research was done about the other local governments and how they handle public comments. So I think it's incorrect assumptions that were made, and I just wanted to correct that. Thank you.
Trustee Domingue.
I'd like to make a suggestion to the maker of the motion and the second. Would you consider 3 minutes on each agenda item?
May I address that?
Yes.
And you mean instead of having it just at the beginning of the meeting, they can speak
On
on
the
each
agenda
item,
item, 3 minutes.
but limited to,
3 minutes.
sure.
Point of clarification, is that per agenda item, or I can tell here again?
For each agenda item, I'm suggesting, they're the maker of the motions. What was that? That on each agenda item, if someone wants to speak, they have 3 minutes for each agenda item. The public.
Trustee, or Treasurer Elliott.
Yes, I appreciate the comments. Is there support for the motion? Yes, is there a motion?
They're the makers of the motion. They'd have to amend their motions.
Just point of order, Mr. Supervisor, I thought I heard the maker of the motion say that she was okay with that, and that I did not hear the second.
Yes, continued support with the changes. I'd also like to suggest a change.
So so I'm clear, there's an amendment to the original motion to alter to 3 minutes on agenda items. The second for that motion is Treasurer Elliott.
And then an understood removal of public comments at the beginning of the agenda, as it's stated.
So the change would be from 5 to 3 at the beginning.
No. We would remove public comments at the beginning of the meeting, remove that item, and instead allow for 3 minutes per member of the public on each agenda item. That's how I understood. And that's
my suggestion, you're the maker of the motion.
right, and I'm accepting that as the maker to include that.
So for clarity, the 5 at the end.
And keep
and
the 5 at
continue
the
that-
end.
Keep that in place.
Yes.
So there's a motion on,
Can we have the support for we have the motion maker agreeing to the friendly amendment and continued support? Thank you. And can we continue the debate, second round on in essence, it's the same motion, minus two minutes, in essence. I appreciate if I may, Mr. Supervisor, and I don't know if it's okay to have the
yes,
floor here. So
Trustee Joseph.
the concession is nice, and I applaud Trustee Domingue for making that request, and the motion maker for considering the concession. But if anything, I think you should increase the time. And I think we heard very loud and clear from the public, inclusive of a representative who's here a month. And if the fresh perspective isn't valued, I don't know what is. As Ms. Merriweather spoke, we've had some very difficult conversations, but I'm glad that we had them because I think listening to her, and when she's taking me to task on an issue, I may not like it, but I'm learning. There's a perspective there. There's an input that I hadn't thought of. There's a diversity of thought. And so when you take the ability to speak at the beginning of the meeting, and then you substitute that for exchange like we just saw here today, I would argue that the comments we heard from the public actually motivated Trustee Domingue to look for a solution. And that's always a good thing. And I think we waste that if we don't harness the energy of the people that care enough about this township to show up during a meeting. Because you know, the people that show up for these meetings, they know how it goes. They go to the podium. Sometimes new people will come in and they'll pose a question to the board and they'll stand at the podium waiting for an answer. And our board policy dictates that we have to stare back at you like a caveman seeing fire for the first time because we don't have debate. We are supposed to simply listen, and then if we choose to answer your question, we may during the board comments portion, but we do that in the name of civility and business, but I think we should increase the public participation. And to the residents that said, you know, I know you can't be here for 8 hours or till midnight, actually I can. And I don't think I would be happier than to come to a board meeting and be filled with people who cared enough about their community to want to debate it hour after hour. Worthwhile debate, not some of the debates that we've seen here, and I agree with my fellow board members, name calling or personal attacks, they don't advance the debate. But that is the chairman of the board. And the chairman of the board, no matter what parameters you put. We've heard about everything from Clinton Township to Washington Township, and with all due respect to the motion maker, she comes from a long history of very successful leadership, but she was in a position that represented over 800,000 residents. So I understand that a business meeting like that might not afford 5 minutes for every resident to speak, but we are not that. We are not that community. And if you want to see the disparity in when we compare ourselves from one community to the next, and we're using that as a rationale for our decision tonight, wait until you see the debate on agenda item F. When we talk about neighboring communities and what they do. I'm sorry? There is germane to that because you're talking about basing a decision on neighboring communities. And so if that's in play now, I'd like it to be in play later on the agenda. So when we talk about public participation, I think it's critical that we get as much as we can. We continue to solicit as much as we can, and we have it during the deliberation. As steel sharpens steel, we get stronger hearing from the public. We shouldn't put APOs in place to censor that. So I'm grateful for 3 minutes, but I'd be in full support if we went to 10 minutes. And more talk is what we need from our bosses. That's what we need. So I do appreciate it, but I'm still going to vote this down because right now you have 5, and I'm going to continue to fight for that. And I think that's what you should have. Thank you.
Mr. If there are no other speakers, could I be on for the next round, please?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to have round 1 or 1.5, whatever.
Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. I was just talk about the big picture here. APO 04-2018. That's what we're debating right now or addressing. This little piece of paper wouldn't have shown up here unless there was 4 votes to pass it. It came here a last meeting with our former supervisor, and it resurrected. Here it is again. We wouldn't see this unless there was enough votes among my good friends here to pass it. With all the intrinsic tapestry that it contains, if you read through it, Mr. Joseph talks about the red ink and everything else, trying to figure out what does it say. I know someone may be upset because it may give the supervisor a little more say in what comes to the agenda. We have a new supervisor, by the way. I feel a little more comfortable with that. This whole thing is, if it's not broke, what do you need to fix? There's no problem the way the public has been speaking at our meetings. And the greatest thing I thank all of you here is that we had a tremendous lesson here, just if you're sitting here listening to it, civics and government that just occurred. If you're watching this on YouTube or something, I didn't write down the time when this mighty fine APO, the discussion started, and all the wonderful townships that surround us that meet for 2 minutes or allow the public to do this or that. We're Chesterfield, we're not them. But my fellow residents, you and your remarks here, you kind of, look what happened up here. There is a merit to it. If this thing passed the way it was, you'd have no say in it. Again, I agree with Mr. Joseph, and I thank each and every one of you for your remarks. Thank you.
Trustee Vosper. Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. So the reason that I originally went and looked at other communities is because Trustee Joseph at our last meeting compared Chesterfield to Macomb Township and in his comments. So then I said, well, how do other communities do it? And that would be the reason why I went and looked and did my homework. So the personal attacks, we see that here, we saw it here tonight already. So verbal attacking of board members and using the word afraid of residents. Do I need to be afraid? Does anybody need to be afraid? So one of the things, the redlining of an APO is really standard practice, not entirely sure why those comments are being made, because that's very standard practice when these things come to the board. So the red line, the red comments that, excuse me, the part in red that's been added reads this as far as comments made. Says comments should avoid coarse language, cursing, and personal attacks. They may not be addressed to anyone other than the board or chairperson and will not be guaranteed a reply back during the meeting. Should such speaker request information, they may fill out a comment form, or a board member or township employee will respond back in a reasonable time frame. That is one of the things that I personally appreciate. It clarifies to the public exactly what they're supposed to do. So I have been on this side of the table. I've been sitting as a resident and wasn't always clear on what I should do. And then always was concerned, sometimes people are commenting to they're sitting at the podium and then they're commenting to the other residents, and this clarifies that you're supposed to actually address the board. When I was a resident, I didn't necessarily know that, so I did appreciate that language. I don't think it's to control, but it's to clarify what is supposed to happen. I do appreciate everybody's comments, I really do. However, when they get to be personal attacks on people and threats on board members, and it no longer becomes dialogue. And that is what started this conversation, is there's no longer dialogue and respect amongst residents. We are all neighbors, right? We're all neighbors, all of us and the residents here. And so this, I do appreciate Trustee Vosberg being diligent and forcing us to actually have this discussion and talk about how do we treat one another. And I think that has been something that we've talked about a lot over the last 6 months, is how should we treat one another. I support the change to the 3 minutes per agenda item. That allows for a comment in each, and I feel that was a great suggestion by Trustee Demink. Thank you.
So there's a motion on the floor by Trustee Vosberg, seconded by Treasurer Elliott, to approve with amendments. Clerk Barry, could you keep track of the amendments for me?
I actually had one additional amendment that I was going to ask the motion makers for. I cannot support this item without the change under item 4, a meeting agenda. Final approval of the proposed agenda and the order of business of the items submitted for consideration shall be approved by the township supervisor prior to publishing. I can't support this agenda item with that language in there. So if the language is willing to be pulled out there and just leave it, the other changes I'm okay with, and I'm okay with the 3 minutes, but if the motion maker would be willing to, if we could also change that and make that an amendment as well.
That was what I was going to bring up, my next, when you got to me. So there's no other speakers. Yes, I would concur with that. So in other words, where it's number 4, that first paragraph, remove the red and restore the crossed out part. So it reads as the original. Is that what you're saying, Clerk Barry?
I'm okay just striking out the red. I think the other changes,
I think it needs to stay.
I think that needs to be, yeah, I think it needs to be reverted to its original.
Correct. So we
Please.
just remove the red,
Yes.
add additional language, restore the stricken language.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
I would concur with that.
Just a point of clarity, Mr. Supervisor. So there's 14 pages, 8 of them have red ink. We are now striking all the red ink except the 2 minutes
No.
I think the suggestion to go back to committee and bring this forward when it's ready for prime time, I'm terribly confused. I think I'll just go with my gut and vote to not suppress voters and residents' rights to speak, and then I'll be on the safe side. No matter what you decide with all of your red ink and all of your strike-throughs, I'll go that route and I'll be safe.
Mr. Supervisor, point of clarification. So the striking of the red ink is in the first paragraph under number 4. The first paragraph under number 4, meeting agenda, strike the red ink in the first paragraph of item 4 and restore the crossed out language in that same paragraph. That's quite clear. And I think the clerk understood that as well, who was responsible for making the changes, recording the changes. Thank you.
So there's motion on the floor by trustee Vosberg, second by treasurer Elliott, with amendments to approve APO 04-2018. Clerk Barry, do you want to read the amendments as stated?
I have 2 recorded amendments. The first one is under number 4, meeting agenda, to strike out the proposed language and restore the original language. And then the other change is to remove the proposed public comments on agenda items at the beginning of the meeting and institute a 3-minute limit per speaker per agenda item, in addition to the 5 minutes at the end of the meeting. That is what I have recorded.
Clerk Barry, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Supervisor, point of clarity, you have renumbered, the red ink is renumbered. When you strike that, thank you. You strike that and you have, we go from 13 we go from 13 items on the agenda to 15 with the red ink. You're going to strike 7, and what happens to the other red number?
Director Duchesne, do you want to address those? They would just simply be renumbered, correct?
You can't, Mr. Supervisor, I don't think you can renumber. I'm asking which one of the blacked out current will be sacrificed. Because you go from 13 to 15, you're saying scratch 1, and that takes you down to 4, but you're still, you've substantially changed the procedural order of the agenda. It's really gotten quite ridiculous now. It really has. I don't understand why this is being done like this for an hour.
The reason that the numbering went from 13 to 15, and I don't know if this provides any clarity, but it went from 13 to 15 because you had the addition of public comments at the beginning, and also the approval of the agenda was pulled out of the consent agenda, and now it has its own item as number 4. So it's good. There's going to be 14 items total as I read this under the proposed agenda order of business. It'll go from 13 to 14 because of the addition of the approval of the agenda now being its own item.
You go from 6 to 8, look at your consent agenda.
Right, I understand that, but I'm saying the total number of items, the reason why it goes from 13, why it went from 13 to 15 is because you had those 2 additions. Now it's going to go 13 to 14 because you've pulled off the number 7, but you still have number 4. That is new.
Okay.
Clerk Barry, would you call the roll?
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Supervisor Kirsten.
No.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Motion approved. Item B, regular agenda.
Item B is to approve a recommendation by the Department of Public Safety to purchase Knoxbox key control heads for every fire department vehicle in the amount of $11,895 from GL number 205340977.
Do I have a motion to approve item B?
Motion to approve as stated.
Support.
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 Go ahead, Kim.
Treasurer Elliott. Chief Miller.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor, members of the board. This is an item that was captured in our 2020 capital improvement. And what we're doing here is we're upgrading some obsolete equipment on the fire engines. This is a key security box for our Knoxbox system. This is a standard that's used around the nation for fire departments to gain access to businesses after hours in an emergency without causing damage to the business. It is actually included in our International Fire Code, which we enforce as well. So what this will do is provide us more security and updated technology on board our vehicles to keep these keys secure.
Discussion from the board. Clerk Barry, would you call the roll? Oh,
Clerk Barry.
I'm sorry. Public comments. I'm sorry. Public comments. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Clerk Barry, aye. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Kirsten.
Aye. Thank you, Chief Miller.
Thank you very much.
Item C, Clerk Barry.
Item 7C is to approve a recommendation by Facilities and Operations Department to contract with DTE, including installation of 7 58-watt LED Leotech pathway lights at Salt River Nature Center in the amount of $2,338.98 and a 5-year lamp charge of $1,196.16 per year. Total contract obligation over the 5 years is $8,319.78 from GL number 101-265-931-000 and 101-265-920.
So moved.
Support.
Support or moved by Trustee Demink, support by Trustee Vosberg, Treasurer Elliott, I'm sorry. Josh?
Good evening. Just a quick summary of this project. So obviously with the Salt River Nature Center piece of parcel that we acquired, we have a sidewalk that's been there for a long time. It was really overgrown. We cut that sidewalk back and we wanted to see how that sidewalk was used. So we kind of monitored it. We're getting a lot of traffic from Embassy to Hooker. And the one issue we've always had is at night, it gets really dark on that end of the property. So Stephanie Yenna from our office reached out to DTE and was working on a grant, actually a collaboration with DTE, to put 7 streetlights along that path. And during this process, there's a map included in your agenda packet. Kind of shows the location of those lights. They're an LED, basically street light, but not as bright. And what we plan to do is light that path, but not overlight it. We want to add a few. You'll see there's like 3 fixtures at the end of Hooker, and then several throughout the path. We took the time to meet with all the neighbors along the path, including the neighbors on both ends and the Mrs. Rogers, who's positioned in the middle of the path, and they all liked the idea. Their number one concern was some of the stuff that happens in the evening on that path. So this was a way to, our first step to solve that problem. So that's what you see in front of you.
Any comments from the public? No comments from the public? Board, Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Mr. Supervisor, I have a quick comment. I know the Salt River Nature Center, the pathway lights, I see the value there. What I don't understand is the existing lights that we have around some of our other installations are woefully inadequate. And I think that the never-ending sort of branching out of wonderful projects elsewhere at the expense of current projects. So if you go out to the new shoreline project, or if you go out to Brandenburg and you look at the lights out there, I think a resident called me and said, we got a dozen lights out. You know, so we talk about safety, but we have so many areas of safety and poor lighting. Why do we continue to go in the expansive way and do a little bit good in like a lot of areas and really fail at what we've invested now millions? We don't even have adequate lighting out there. Why would we put energy somewhere else and close the loop on one project before, you know, tackling another, only to go to another and so forth?
So, great question. I could spend hours addressing that question. You will find that in our time being here, especially my short time being here, there's an endless amount of issues, and I guess I'll call it from the past. Prior installations were done, I guess, to save money. So a lot of our underground infrastructure, even at Pollard, when we went to do the shoreline project, we found unmarked lines, a lot of 480 power that was installed inadequate. We've made those repairs. You'll notice at Brandenburg, as we go through this process, we find other items, we're fixing them. You can see us doing electrical work at Pollard with the pitching machines and some of the parking lot lights. Also at Brandenburg, you'll find that some of those lights will be off and on as we rewire and look at all of our infrastructure. This property was put in my possession, so I'm responsible for safety. I don't always agree. I'm a big fan since I've been here. You'll notice day one, I'm a big fan of shrinking our portfolio. Chesterfield owns, in my opinion, too much property, but that's a discussion for another day.
Any more comments from the board? Treasurer Elliott?
It's my understanding, thank you very much, Mr. Supervisor. So it's my understanding that, so the installation is $2,338.98, correct? And that is going to be done by DTE. So that's the cost to us. Is that correct?
Correct. They were looking at a way to share cost and not us bear the burden. It was basically a shared cost. It's kind of their grant proposal, their way they help out the community. So their lighting planner came out. She put together the first proposal. We went back to her with some other options. There was some back and forth. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's our job. If something is placed in our lap, it's our job to present what we can to provide as much safety and security as possible. We didn't know how that parcel would be used. Now we have so many kids. In fact, my kids kind of cut through there to go to 7-Eleven by bike. So I rode down there myself, and we've done a really good job with the tools we were allowed to in the beginning to open that path to make it safe. We've got a lot of compliments, but this is just a simple next step to make it a little bit safer.
So we're getting 7 pathway lights installed for only $2,338.98. And then they handle all of the maintenance and all the fixes and the repairs. Those are not for us. And that's at a cost of $1,196.16 per year, right? And so it's kind of, we don't have to worry about that, which is different than what is happening at Brandenburg Park, correct?
Correct.
You're right. And so at Brandenburg Park, we have to maintain those, and that's where the difficulty. So you guys did a good job of reaching out to DTE and seeing if they can handle the maintenance, and then we just have to pay them.
Correct. The other option we would have is we would have to drop a meter in. We would have to install pathway lights, which would incur cost in foundation, underground wiring, us buying the lights. We took advantage of the poles on site. So not only did we take advantage of the poles on site to put these lights in, but when we did the original peel back and opening up of that path, we actually reached out to DTE and they brought their linemen in. And if you go down that path, you'll see to the right where the telephone poles are. We have a lot of pictures in the beginning. There was ivy, they were overgrown, they were unsafe. DTE actually incurred the cost, most of that, to clean up that 25-foot strip to open that path up. So they've helped us with that, and they're helping us with these lights. To me, it just makes sense.
So it's really just it's a safety issue?
Correct.
Okay. And that's coming out of the 265 account, right? Well, the installation is coming out of one light item, and then the maintenance is coming out of another?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any further comments from the board? Clerk Berry, call the roll. Where did? Yeah, we did already. Thank-
Trustee Demink. Aye. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Kirsten.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Thank you.
Item 7D, Clerk Barry.
Item 7D is to adopt ordinance number 191, amending the Charter Township of Chesterfield Code of Ordinances, Chapter 76, zoning, Section 5.45, uses of a temporary nature, and Section 4.34B.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to adopt ordinance number 191.
191, I'm sorry. Second.
Support.
Treasurer Elliott.
I'll let Vosberg have
Public
it this
comments?
time.
Jonathan?
Yeah, thank you. This ordinance was done in conjunction with the ordinance that was in front of you a few meetings ago for soliciting and vending. What this one does is it's an addition to the zoning ordinance, which is why it took a little bit longer. I had to go through the public hearing process. But this establishes basically a more well-defined process for the booth stands displays that go along with temporary events. So your solicitors and vendors, when they have events, art van, fireworks, or when bars and restaurants have their events, it gives them a process that gets reviewed by the planning department, building department, and public safety department. And as I said, this is in conjunction with that other ordinance that was approved a few meetings ago. It does reference this ordinance in that one, so really this is a necessity to keep that ordinance valid. So at this point, it did go to the Planning Commission, and they are recommending approval.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any comments from the public? Comments from the board? Clerk Barry?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'd just like to thank the Planning Commission. Thank you, Administrator Palin, for, we've been working on this for about 2 years now. And it was very tedious. It was a very long and involved process. And I want to thank you and the Planning Commission who unanimously approved this. I think that's testament to all of the work and all of the time that went into this. I think our first stab at the amendments was in 2019, and we had hoped to get this to the board prior to fireworks season, but unfortunately the timing, as you pointed out, just didn't work out that way. But I think this cures so many ills that we had been dealing with for quite a few years, and I want to thank you for your continued efforts and all of the work that we put into this. I want to thank you so much for your assistance.
Any further comments from the board? Clerk Barry, go ahead. Call the roll, please.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kirsten.
Aye. Item 7E, Clerk Barry.
Item 7E was removed from the agenda. Item 7F will be to consider, 1, to direct the Planning Commission and Township Planning Consultant to prepare, review, and recommend to the Township Board zoning ordinance amendments allowing marijuana establishments within the township, and 2, to direct the Township Attorney to draft a regulatory ordinance regulating the operation of marijuana establishments.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve as stated.
Support. Motion to approve by Clerk Barry, support by Trustee Joseph. Discussion? Trustee Demink.
Okay, I see this is on the agenda item. We have a cannabis committee. Since the change in the board, we've only had one cannabis committee, and there was no direction taken. Myself, Trustee Vosberg, Supervisor Kirsten, then Public Safety Director Kirsten was on the panel, along with Clerk Barry and Mr. Palin. Mr. Siebert was also at that meeting, and we came up at that meeting. There was just information exchange. The purpose of the cannabis committee was to see where we're going to go, and we haven't had a vote on it. I believe I'm going to make a motion that this be tabled and thrown back to the cannabis committee.
Is there support for that motion?
Support.
Treasurer Elliott?
I'm sorry, point of order. I didn't understand the motion that was made. Was there a specific date that you would like to bring it back?
Yeah, let's, I say we postpone it for up to 4 meetings.
So, if I may speak on the motion,
That way, can I just go ahead? Dave, I feel that this should go back to cannabis. We had the committee, just like when you guys had Water Advisory Board.
Yeah.
We had the committee.
Yes.
Whether Supervisor Kirsten still wants to sit on it or not. At the last meeting, Mr. Palin advised that he would not vote on the issue because if he's going to have to direct some type of laws or zoning, that would be a conflict of interest. So the vote would have been myself, Trustee Vosberg, Clerk Barry, and Director Kirsten, now Supervisor Kirsten. That was on the panel. That was, I forget the date of that meeting, several weeks ago.
Would you consider withdrawing your motion to allow debate on the primary and allow me the opportunity to address some of the things that you raised there? Because I think I may be able to answer some of those in the motion without stifling the discussion. So I would ask you to consider withdrawing your motion to allow debate on the original, and then you could always bring back your motion if you're not satisfied in the deliberation.
Yeah, I've just given a note by Karen here, that Cannabis Committee was July 26th. Oh, that was the next meeting? Okay. Sorry, I didn't read that right. I just feel this should go back to canvas. That's why
No,
we
I
had the
understand that
committee.
if you'd allow the debate to continue on the main motion by withdrawing your motion temporarily, we could cover a couple of those things because there's some things I'd like to share with you.
All right, I'll give it to you, Dave.
Thank you.
But I'm
So,
going to bring the motion right
I'm
back.
fine
I'll
with that, and
guarantee
I
you
understand where you're coming from. I just wanted to point out a couple of things with your...
Trustee Domingue withdraws his motion?
I think he did, yeah.
I'll withdraw it, but it's going to come back.
Very, very good.
Trustee Joseph?
Thank you. I think what needs to be clarified with regard to how the Cannabis Committee ended its term, which was before the election, was a real stagnation given the board action. The Cannabis Committee at that time, as a member of it, as one of the co-chairs, I can tell you that the Cannabis Committee was unable to go any further in terms of exploring exactly what this motion or this agenda item will do. So this agenda item is designed to bring to the board a very specific menu option. By voting yes for this agenda item, you've entered the restaurant and you're asking to see the menu. You're not approving any marijuana licenses, you're not approving any dispensaries, you're not approving any licenses of any kind, where they will go or what they will be. And the direction that we received from Attorney Siebert during the nearly 2 years of Cannabis Committee meetings was until the Township Board moves past the opt-out, which is very, very, very limiting in terms of what you can do as it relates to cannabis. Shortly, you can do nothing because you've opted out. You can't consider anything until you take some action to see what the options might even be. And so that was the conclusionary finding of the Cannabis Committee. The Cannabis Committee never would or never will come forward with a recommendation that says you should put this many dispensaries here or this kind of grow license there without taking the action that this board potentially takes tonight, which is to say to the attorney and to the Planning Commission, bring us something so that we at least know what it is we're saying yes or no to. I would argue, and you could poll any member of the Cannabis Committee, several are on the board here, that the committee can do no more work. There really is no more deliberation if the Township Board continues an opt-out. So this agenda item moves you into a place where you can now see what the licenses would potentially look like. And during that process, you can have meaningful discussion because over the course of what I anticipate to be at least a few months, you will see and hear what people might be interested in, and the board, nothing happens until the board agrees. So right now, you've stagnated in terms of what the Cannabis Committee can really do. And there was a lot of work done. There were a lot of speakers that came in and a lot of different viewpoints from individuals in the cannabis business, from our police chief and fire chief who spoke on enforcement issues, planning and zoning that talked about the infrastructure demands. We had presentations from people who are currently doing business in other communities, and they gave suggestions on how we might craft ours. But and I think if you're going to bring your motion back, please corroborate what I'm telling you with Attorney Siebert. This board, the Cannabis Committee, can go no further than they've already gone. Sending it back to committee will do nothing except delay a process which we have kicked now, I think, for 2 years. Until we move from the very straightforward opt-out, you don't even know what you're voting no on. Tonight, if you were to vote yes on this agenda item, you're saying, yes, I agree to see the menu. That's in essence what you're doing. You're not voting for marijuana. You're not advancing marijuana. And I'm encouraged to hear from other board members who are diligently pointing and bringing your attention to something. But this is an ask to see the options. And I, as a member of the Cannabis Committee, felt that the formation of the committee was, in my opinion, a stall. That there are just people who are going to vote no, and I respect that. But the stall is not forgivable. That isn't right. To continue to look for cover and put a committee, when we know that the committee can do no more good for you. They can provide no more information to help you say no in a more creative way. Just say no. It's okay. There's an argument for that, and I will make that at a later date when we find more information. But I can tell you, and we've talked about it privately, the continuation of kicking the can down the road and pretending there's some more information out there, if only we'll harvest it, is not a good move. And the reason is primarily because you have black market cannabis moving into our township, and the stuff that is going into kids now, unregulated, unlicensed, unsurveilled, is really quite a disservice. So we can sit here and say no, but what you're really saying is yes to cannabis that is going into our community with toxins, pesticides, no testing, no oversight, no enforcement. And I realize while it may be politically palatable to say I stand against drugs, you're doing exactly the opposite. You're doing exactly the opposite. So I can't stress to you strongly enough, at least make an informed decision on what you're voting no on, but you have to see the evidence. You have to see something other than the opt-out, which we've been under since the proposal passed. And I encourage you, talk to Attorney Siebert and any member of the Cannabis Committee. There's no more room to be gained there. So I don't know if you guys have a committee down there, but one of you feel free to challenge anything that I've said because it's accurate. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Trustee Joseph.
Can I ask counsel a question?
Please.
Mr. Siebert, can we make a motion to extend the opt-out?
You don't have to make a motion to extend the opt-out. You're already opted out. Chesterfield does not prohibit marijuana establishments, period. There's nothing to extend.
Okay. I didn't know if we had a time limit on it or not.
The statute specifically allows a municipality to adopt an ordinance banning some or all marijuana establishments under the statute. You, like 1,300 other municipalities, have adopted an ordinance banning marijuana establishments throughout your boundaries, period. They're not coming in until 4 votes here say otherwise. It's been like that for 2 years. They're not coming in until the board has a change of philosophy.
Trustee Green, good.
Anybody else got anything to say? It's round robin, so.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Trustee Joseph is correct in what he's saying. As the former co-chair of the Cannabis Committee, we had nothing more that we could do. Anytime we would come up against an issue, attorney would say, well, you know, you don't have an ordinance. There's, you know, do you want to craft an ordinance or don't you want to craft one? If you don't, then you're done. And so the thing is, we never had clarity on that question. So it had to go to the board. When I asked who makes that directive, Attorney Siebert said the board. So that is why this agenda item's in front of us today, because it has to come from the board. My position in terms of having an ordinance drafted is one of a proactive approach to an issue that we are going to have to deal with, whether we control the issue or whether a ballot initiative is put forth, which I am contacted almost weekly by individuals who are going to draft a ballot initiative. It's coming. We know because we're being asked questions about how it gets on the ballot, what needs to be done, where they can pick up materials. So we know that there is a considerable amount of interest in a ballot initiative. In the event that that happens, I would much rather see our township prepared with an ordinance, because you're going to have an ordinance either way, whether it comes by ballot initiative or whether this board decides to move in that direction. You need an ordinance. So I would rather be in a position to give us time to have input and discussion on a potential ordinance, even if it goes nowhere. At least we have it in our back pocket. We've had discussion. We've had meaningful debate. It's gone through the Planning Commission. Instead of putting not only the Planning Commission, but this board in a position after possibly November where you have a very short window of time to get an ordinance crafted, and now you've got to rush to do that, and you've got to rush to have discussion. And instead of being reactionary in our posture, I would rather we be proactive in a proactive posture where we're negotiating from a point of strength. So say, we have taken several months, developed this ordinance, and we have it in our back pocket just in case. I would much rather have it as an insurance policy safe in our pocket rather than be put in a position where we have a ballot initiative that's passed, the residents have now said they want this, and now we are under the gun to get something done. I just don't, especially during holidays and so on, I just would rather not be put in that position, and I don't think it would be prudent for us to put the township as a whole in that position. I would much rather we be proactive rather than reactive, and I think if we don't do this now, again, we don't have to even vote on it ever. We don't have to do anything with it, but at least to have it so that we can be prepared. So it's a matter of preparedness, is my opinion, because I think this issue is going to be something we're going to have to deal with at some point this year.
Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. Also was on the original committee for 2 years with Trustee Joseph and Clerk Barry. Monthly meetings, presentations. Seemed like after a while we're kind of bogged down with the information coming in. Originally I was part, and I still am, of the zero marijuana for Chesterfield position. An issue that came up, and I'll ask council to jump in here, if there, township can continue to be no to marijuana growth or whatever, vendors. If there was a ballot initiative in Chesterfield that was successful as far as the marijuana issue, could the township as a whole lose control over, or much control over managing that process? I don't know if that question is clarified enough, Mr. Siebert. I don't know if you can.
The answer is maybe. The way the statute is drafted is it specifically permits the municipality to prohibit some or all of the allowable marijuana establishments that are set forth in the statute, and there are 6 or 6.5, depending on how you read the statute. In any event, Chesterfield has said no. If an individual can obtain petitions signed by 5% of the people that voted in the last gubernatorial election, they can put a ballot question together which is limited to the question of whether or not you will permit a certain number of marijuana establishments. This statute is brand new. This is only a couple of years old. The courts have not interpreted this, the appellate courts have not interpreted this section to determine what that ballot proposal would look like. I'm assuming the marijuana establishment proponents would take the position that they can put on the ballot an entire ordinance. I don't share that view, and I don't know any attorneys that I've talked to that do, but there aren't any cases that have dealt with it before. My position would be all they can put on the ballot is, shall the residents of Chesterfield Township approve 6 of this and 5 of this and however many in different categories, and that would be it. And then the township board, if it were passed, would then have to adopt an ordinance putting together a regulatory scheme and then zoning ordinance amendments. So Clerk Berry is quite right that if that were to go forward, you would be in a bit of a bind and you'd have to do some quick work to get these ordinances passed. But certainly this right of petition is lurking out there, but that's not a legal issue, that's a political issue as to whether or not a proposal would come forward, what it would look like, whether it would pass. You know, that's a betting game, that's not a legal issue. You know.
Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, I didn't want to jump in the second round if there were individuals that have spoken. Sorry.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you. So the question of the ballot initiative, the area that we lose, in my opinion, on the ballot initiative is taking no action and then having a, I didn't want to jump your turn. I thought you said no, but
My mistake,
let me,
I did.
I'll stand down and listen to you. I haven't heard from you in the
Treasurer
first
Elliott,
round.
my apologies.
Thank you, Supervisor. So being neither on the Cannabis Committee and also a fairly new board member, I appreciate Mr. Trustee Domingue's comments about wanting it to go back to the Cannabis Committee. Although there's a lot of opinions up here, a lot of board members have strong opinions. I feel like right now, it's you better buy it now. You better buy it today. Right? You better buy this, whatever we're selling to you, buy it today because tomorrow the price is going to go up. That's kind of the tone. And whenever I feel like that, it's usually sit back and I have a day. I'll think about it, right, before you do that. I support this going back to the Cannabis Committee for several reasons. First of all, I think that the supervisor, because of the many things that the many changes that he has done, should probably take a look at, who is that committee and what's its purpose. I think that there's time to do that. And I'd also like to see actual data. I don't like making decisions based on emotions, and I do like to see the due diligence. So I would support going back to the Cannabis Committee so that I can do some due diligence and get some more data and understanding the presentations that I've heard about. Maybe some of the board members have seen, but I personally have not.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you. I regret to hear the feeling of buy it now, buy it today, and the pressure. The proposal for recreational marijuana passed 3 years ago. 3 years ago, the proposal passed. For 2.5 years, the Cannabis Committee has engaged in what I think several of the meetings could have been an email, to be quite honest with you. Missed the boat. We've missed the boat in some areas. There's a facility in Warren where the investors took over a mothballed Ford plant. They spent $25 million, and they have a grow operation there that has revitalized that neighborhood. Their products are dispensed all over the state. And in talking with those individuals, even though Chesterfield has lots and lots of agriculture areas and commercial areas where I would argue that facility could operate here, it won't happen just because of supply and demand. So we are missing opportunities, but that's only from the revenue side. I think we're missing tremendous opportunities on the revenue side. And I know that you have great relationships with neighboring communities. You can look no further than, say, New Baltimore or even up north where people are managing cannabis in a responsible way without the degradation of their community. So looking at neighboring communities and you see what's happening, it's going up all around us. We continue to say let's look at this, and let's not jump too hastily into this, but this proposal passed in 2018. And there is, I guess, I didn't agree with it then. I said, let's just take a vote. Let's just find out who wants to do what, and then we can, close the case. We can close the case, but we haven't. We've continued to put committee, and as a co-chair, you have three chairmen of sorts. I can assure you that the committee has, it's not an opinion, it's fact, the committee has no more field to plow. You have either a no, and I've talked to Trustee Demink many times. I know his position, and I respect it. What I don't respect is an unwillingness to bring it to the people. Just take the vote. You don't have, I would argue, if this fails, end the cannabis, because it's wasting everyone's time. It truly is. There's nothing of value coming out of these committee meetings. I wasn't at the last two because I was removed from the committee, but the meeting minutes were literally minutes. There was 2 or 3 minutes, and most of that was procedural, taking attendance. There's nothing constructive going on there. It's a farce. It really, truly is. There's no more information, and I assure you, Treasurer Elliott, your own independent, you can homeschool on this one, and you will have tremendous amounts of information. I'm sure Clerk Berry can share with you the minutes, and you can read the past 8 meetings, as you get to a quiet place before you go to bed. It'll help you sleep. There's like 8 minutes of dialogue in there. Nothing. You can't do anything more until you take a vote as a board to see the menu. You can't avoid being in the restaurant. The proposal passage put us in the restaurant. If you feel that your proposal to opt out is good, just vote this down. If there's enough of that, then we just put it to rest. It's a no. It's a no cannabis, and then people can go out, as the attorney said, and bring a ballot initiative. And I really do think, being on the committee for a couple of years now, the petitions are already circulating. It's not a matter of when. I mean, it's just when. And I can tell you, as if I were the business owner in this community for 2 years trying to figure out how to best meet the community's needs, I wouldn't have any reservations about going for the brass ring when I started asking for dispensaries. And then it's up to the people. You don't get to decide. And so no ordinance on anything to do with setbacks, how many feet you'd like it away from a school, how many feet you'd like it away from another dispensary, how many feet you'd like it away from a daycare. You don't even want to see that. You don't even want to see that. And I think that's a tremendous liability. Again, I can meet with you whenever you'd like, and I can show you the financials. But if you don't care about the financials, I'd like to show you some data on what the cannabis myths associated with the degradation of your community are. In the state of Colorado, they did it right, and they looked at what the health ramifications were, and they structured their policy on the health ramifications. And what we're seeing in Michigan from all other states that have passed recreational is that what you have is the flooding of black market cannabis and cartels flooding into Michigan, precisely because of the transactions that we have unfolding here week after week, month after month, year after year. Doing nothing and pretending like we're in some kind of, look busy is really tragic. And not only are we missing opportunities, but we're missing financial opportunities. We're missing opportunities to structure possibly whatever cannabis could look like. It'll be here eventually. That is an opinion, but taking a passive role and just say no is just saying yes to black market cannabis. Very dangerous stuff, and this is the stuff that's resulting in young people in the emergency room with neurological problems and cardiac problems. There are some cannabis products out there that don't have testing obligations that are really doing a lot of damage to a lot of young people. So I would encourage you, really, this is an area, if you redouble your efforts on the APO involving board rules, I guarantee you will come away with some earth-shattering information, because it's quite astounding to see what's going on. I just think we go up or down. It's okay to vote no, and I respect that, but I think it's just very, very time appropriate to just lay our cards out and say, let's close it. If we're gonna just say it's no, then let's close it. But let's not continue. Let's not perpetuate this ongoing exercise in futility. Thank you.
Any further comments from the board? I have a motion from Clerk Barry, supported by Trustee Joseph, to approve item F. Oh, my apologies again. Any comments from the public?
If I could, Mr. Supervisor. Trustee Joseph, you and I have gone at it for many years up here. And you have your view on this, and I have my view. You're in your part from juveniles and drug court. I'm in my part from 40-plus years in law enforcement. You said it right, I'm no vote. It's still against federal law. Mr. Aiello's gonna get up there and crucify me, and that's your business. He's a defense attorney who's in the marijuana business. That's him. But I see it from a different standpoint too. I work with the team of people that I work with at the PD I work with. It's still an issue, along with all the other drugs. It's still a drug. And I won't support it as long as I'm on this board. I'm against it. I won't support it. I've seen the after effects. You've seen the after effects, David. You've been in juvenile for how many years? 25 years? So you have yours, Mr. Anderson, your years with DPD and from the school. You know what it does. I'm a no vote. You guys can take, I'll go take that to my grave. That's where I'm standing.
Mr. Supervisor, I want to just clarify one thing.
Yes,
I don't want to confuse anybody who may know my personal history or my work history, because I do not speak for the court, and I do not speak for the drug court, and I have no framework that comes from that. This is not a position that has anything to do with what I do during the day. So I know that I'm okay with you basing whatever you base your no vote, but I just don't want to. I don't want to confuse anybody that it's a juvenile court, whatever, that I have a position based on that, because I don't speak for the court.
No, and I understand.
I just wanted to put that on the record.
No, I understand that, but like I say, you're in your position, and from your years of experience and different views, I have my years of experience. I'm sure Supervisor Kirsten, he's right up there with me, 30-plus years, he has his views. So, thank you, sir.
Comments from the board, Mr. Aiello.
Good. So Chris Aiello, Compass Point. Going on our second year. So I've listened to each one of your comments, and Trustee Demink, I think what's irritating me the most standing here and looking at you is that you're using democracy as a sword, and you're hiding behind the pillars of democracy by trying to send this back to the Cannabis Committee after 2 years. I'm glad that you were finally honest with all of us here and just said you're a no vote. I applaud that. Thank you. But hiding behind and trying to put us back, the industry and your neighbor, I am your neighbor, and to keep me coming back and forth here like a dog and pony show is wrong. What you're doing to everybody else here that supports the industry or supports marijuana in general is just wrong. This is 2021. I don't know where anybody is living except in an archaic world that doesn't understand what's going on with the word marijuana. It is a business. It's a business nationally, it's a business in this state, and it's a big business. Your argument, Mr. Demink, falls under the caregiver model. The caregiver model. And that's for everyone here to understand exactly what Mr. Joseph is saying. That is the unregulated market. That is what you've been dealing with as a police officer for years. And you've seen the effects of some of that, and I get it. But this is a different world. Things are now tested and licensed, and it's a ginormous business regulated by the Michigan Regulatory Agency. And in fact, today, they added hemp to that, if you're paying attention to these issues that affect our community. So hemp is now a member of the Marijuana Regulatory Agency, going to be tested before it can be sold on any shelf. So the argument, I understand your position, but you are so far off. I'm just glad you finally said this. And for anyone else that wants to hide behind, send this back to the Cannabis Committee, is perpetrating an argument that's disingenuous to everyone that lives in Chesterfield, and it's just wrong. Treasurer Elliott, I respect your position, and you can't fall high on that. You knew this issue was coming before you. You ran for this position. It's here. It's 2021. It's on every newspaper cover. There's nothing wrong. Trustee Joseph is right. You're not voting for anything except to educate yourself further. And that is, what does this look like? We cannot hide behind you just got elected, and congratulations, and this is your first and you want to study this. There's nothing left to study. We've been here for 2 years. And so even if you were elected or not elected, and I don't mean to pick out, you should have been here to listen to the Cannabis Committee. They brought in experts from nationally to locally, everywhere. It's been debated and talked about. So there is no, don't send it back to Cannabis Committee. It's ridiculous. Take the step. It's going on in every community around us. New Baltimore has too. This isn't the boogeyman. This is a business, and it's highly regulated, and nobody's going to get injured. Nobody's going to get robbed. There are no problems in the industry. It's here. Your problem, again, if you're thinking that way, falls back on the 2008 caregiver model that allows individuals to grow in their own homes. There is a big effort from Clinton Township throughout all the communities in Southeast Michigan right now. Clinton Township is undergoing this study. They just had their first meeting about how to shrink this down to 200 feet in a home, 5 inspections, eliminate it from homes. You have the ability to do that under the DeRuiter opinion, which your city attorney our township attorney knows. So now you have the ability to regulate it any way you want and get it out of the homes. That's where your problem is. It's not with it's not with the licensed businesses. You're confused. Mr. Anderson, you're confused that you're confusing a licensed industry versus the 2008 model. There's a big movement in Lansing right now to do away with the 2008 caregiver model because that's where all the problems are. They don't pay taxes, they're unregulated, and they work in homes and in neighborhoods where we don't want this business. Nobody up here does, and nobody in the industry does. So we have to get focused, give it an opportunity here to educate yourself. Mr. Siebert knows an awful lot about MRTMA and medical marijuana and all of that. It's all around here. So don't send it back. Give it the opportunity it deserves and get us into 2021, you guys. We're not living in 1932 under Anslinger anymore, who started the war on marijuana. You know, I could go on. Thank you.
Comments from public still? Ms. Merriweather?
Michelle Merriweather, 52860 Muirfield Drive. I just wanted to speak to say I am in full support. If we think that it's not here, it is. One of the things that was pointed out was when Board Member Joseph spoke about ensuring that we are regulating it. One of the things that I do, I am a career coach at Northwest Activity Center for the PATH, which is the old Welfare to Work program. So I see a little bit of everything. And let me tell you something, the issues that I have of young men and women that are using the synthetic forms like Delta 8, which is already here in Chesterfield. The residual effects is happening with their lungs and things like that because they're using things that are not necessarily regulated. It's just an issue and it's a problem, it's a growing problem. When you take a look at what can be done if we issue the right regulations in place, I am in full support of businesses. I believe it's free enterprise. We cannot fight it anymore. It is all around us. I am the first one. I called Public Safety Director Kirsten. I shut down a grow house. I don't want it in the neighborhood, but I would like to see free enterprise and let us join the communities that are around us. It's coming whether we want it or not. And I respect everything that has to be said about the police. I have a brother that is a sergeant. We go back and forth about this all the time, but I do believe that if we put the right pieces in place and get ahead of it, we can benefit from the taxation, we can benefit from what it may bring to the community, and also maybe we can put things in place early that will help limit any sort of criminal element that the police may think may occur by working with business owners who are legitimate business owners who are also familiar with the laws, and we can put the right place and things in place and get in the step with the other communities around us. I mean, I just want to end it by saying it's coming whether we want it or not. It's already in Chesterfield. It's here. We just need to ensure that we're doing the right things at the right time, and let's just kind of, as the gentleman said, step into 2021 on this. Thank you.
John Speaker, 53978 Conner Drive. I don't smoke marijuana. I don't sell it, but I can tell you this, cannabis is coming. So, and like Ms. Merriweather said, it's already here in Chesterfield. So you can sit back and deny it all you want, but it's already here. If certain individuals on this township board would have put the effort in researching cannabis like they did in trying to censor the residents with an APO, a lot of these questions would have already been answered. Trustee DeMink, I know you come from law enforcement. I'm going to agree with Mr. Aiello. It's a whole different perspective when it's regulated and we're losing out on a ton of tax dollars in the township. Not only that, but we're losing out on the opportunity to be able to regulate it and have control of it. I think if we've seen anything tonight on this board is we've obviously have seen a minimum of 3 individuals that are out of touch with the community and that are totally inept to even be sitting up there. So, I mean, we've seen it not just on this discussion, but we've seen it on other discussions. My opinion is, let's move on it. If you're a no vote, vote no. If you're a yes vote, vote yes. But you stop kicking the can down the road because it's already here. Thank you.
So with the whole discussion regarding the marijuana issue, it should be seen as more than just marijuana. The whole thing is the whole plant-based sort of formula, and because of the prohibition from the war on drugs, we have severely limited ourselves as a society and a species in preventing the usage of things like CBD, THC, cannabis, hemp, all these types of things because of the connections, because of it's a recreational drug use that has the predominant thought of what our society determines this to be. But I can say without a doubt, the generation after mine, when it comes of age, will treat the holdouts of the continued prohibition of this type of narrative as the same way we today treat the end of the 18th Amendment with the passage of the 21st Amendment. Prohibition in the past did not work with alcohol. And I can 100% state that alcoholism is a far worse situation in our society than recreational drug use of marijuana. But we shouldn't even be thinking about just the recreational drug use of marijuana. Is everything else tied with that substance that, dare I say, could be a miracle substance within our society? That we don't look at it from the point of view of commerce or from medicinal purposes or industrial purposes. But aside from all of that, I can say without a doubt, I have never utilized marijuana or any drugs in any capacity in my entire life. It is not my choice, though, to say that anyone else should be able to. I have never drank alcohol in my life. I will never tell anyone that they cannot do so. I have never used tobacco in my life. I will never tell anyone they can't use it. You can guide people. You can tell them it is better to not use it. And I would say fully, don't do drugs in that regard. But limiting it and being a holdout community, whereas every other community is laying the groundwork and they're reaping the benefits from it, whether it be through taxes or through commerce or through attracting new businesses or new people to their environments or bringing communities back to life. I mean, how many stories have you heard about a grow business or a dispensary opening up and revitalizing a neighborhood that was downtrodden? This is a part of the future. This is something that, and this isn't some pyramid scheme or something. No, this is, everyone knows it. This is something that everyone knows. And it's just holdouts that are falling behind. Chesterfield should not be a holdout. You know, this isn't to say, let's have all the marijuana industry of Michigan be here. No, it's just simply saying, don't fall behind. Because the repercussions of falling behind will last for years, and you don't want that.
Any further comments from the public? I'll bring it back up to the board. Trustee Joseph?
I won't belabor this all night. Just a few of the comments from some of the audience members were spot on. Ms. Merriweather talked about Delta 8. The most egregious thing that I've seen associated with Delta 8 is the way that it's allowed to get into the stores and into the gas stations and party stores, and then the bastardization of Delta 8. What happens is the Delta 8 is then taken to what mimics what the consumer thinks they're buying is a Delta 9 plant, when really what they're buying is a legal Delta 8 version that has been synthesized with all kinds of horrific chemicals, and it's designed to produce a marijuana-like high. So all the marketing and all the packaging looks like the kid is buying, you know, a plant that somebody grew in their backyard, and really they're buying like carcinogens and pesticides and all kinds of dangerous things. And as you heard, hopefully you hear and educate yourself on this area. The medical model, the caregiver model, was a compassion model. It was designed to help, you know, you heard all of the glaucoma stories and the, you know, the individuals who were suffering from seizure disorders. And what's happened is you have very slick organizations that have corrupted the medical model, and they are hiding out. They are the worst enemy to a forward-thinking community and the cannabis, the legit cannabis crowd, because they are being propped up by very, very sophisticated organizations that are interested in nothing more than separating our kids and our young people from their money. And they don't care what the product is. And the infusion of drug cartels that are getting into the corruption of the medical model. And then what happens is well-intentioned people, we go out and we go, oh, we just got to stop this marijuana. It's everywhere. You're not seeing, and when you look at it from a health standpoint, you're not seeing increased marijuana users. It's not like a dispensary opens and then all of a sudden you've just created all these potheads. The marijuana consumer is out buying marijuana from somewhere, and the use rate is fairly static. So it's not to say that if you have a dispensary here and a dispensary there, you've ticked up consumption and then we're all reefer madness. It's not what's happening. What they're saying is happening is that people that are going to these cannabis shops, they actually look more like me and you, Trustee Demink. There are individuals that go in and say, you know, I really got tired of living in the shadows. If you're a marijuana user before the recreational, you had to make a decision about breaking the law. And so now you can go to a place where something is tested and you have reasonable certainty, and these investors that are coming in, the ones that I've interacted with, it's not just the license fees that you recoup. It's not just it is a relationship with people that want to be part of your community, and the revenue is so significant on their end that what they want to do most is not degrade the community that they're working in. So they're talking about doing big things, and you look at some of these communities, and in Warren, the facility that I visited, I think they generate so much revenue that they're partnering with Warren City Council to look at things like rec centers and senior centers, and that isn't at the expense of the health and welfare of our young people or our community. That is a byproduct of partnering with a business that has been legitimized by the law, as one of our speakers said, over 3 years ago. So it really is time, I think. There's a lot of information, reams and reams and reams out there, and it's time to move. Or, again, I respect a no, but let's at least do that tonight and get on a path of getting more information, not less.
Trustee Anderson.
Thank you, 2 times. I think we go back to this item. This item doesn't say that Chesterfield is endorsing or going to change its position on marijuana. It's like any other business model that's coming into our township. It's looking at what would be necessary as far as our ordinances, and that's all it says. I don't see anything here about, hey, we're going to have, you know, grow operations and anything else. I don't see anything in it, and I don't see a problem with looking at this as far as a possible future issue, that's all. Not endorsing it. Excuse me.
Clerk Barry?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I know it's getting late, but there is a point that I'd just like to bring up here. You know, I think there's a certain stigma that's been attached to people who utilize cannabis products, and I have to be honest with you, I was one of those people who made that characterization. You know, I never used it. I used to tell people, you know, I've never touched it, never used it, and I went to Michigan State. So, you know, that has to be considerable, right? That's something. But what I have observed and what I do know is that I have 2 very, very close friends and dear, dear friends of mine who are alive today because of it. One with cancer and one with alcohol abuse and alcohol addiction. And the products that they secured through the legal, legitimate market saved their lives. And there's no 2 ways about it. And I'd be willing to bet that if our law enforcement friends in the audience took a look at the detrimental effects that they see based on alcohol, they would see much, much more damage than they do from cannabis. I'm sure of it. The deaths from accidents, the deaths from alcohol-infused domestic disputes, I'm willing to bet that alcohol is far more damaging to a community from a law enforcement perspective and to the community than a cannabis product ever could be. I'd like to see the numbers, I'm sure of it. So if we're trying to protect health and safety of the public, perhaps we should prohibit alcohol. Put down your Jack and Coke, put down your Crown Royal, put down your glass of wine. I'm not a drinker, everyone knows that, and everyone makes fun of me for it, that's okay. But go ahead and put down all of that, because you know what, you're doing just as much, you're just as much of a risk as anyone who would use cannabis product. So the worst thing that usually happens with those folks is they get the munchies, right? That's what I've heard, I don't know that. But for someone to go to one of our many establishments in Chesterfield, many, and consume alcoholic beverages, either being served or buying it at a retail establishment, they're far more of a risk than I know of than the cannabis product. And again, people saying that it's here, when they mean it's here, they're not saying just philosophically it's here. It's literally here. I don't know if anyone's, you know, some of the folks are aware, but you can get it delivered just like pizza. It's being delivered to Chesterfield. It's coming in from other communities being delivered here. It's not that people here aren't buying it. They're purchasing it. They're just purchasing it somewhere else, and it's being driven here, and that's legal. And that's going to continue to proliferate. And I also know that we do have a considerably concerning problem in the illegitimate market here. We have gang activity here that's going through the roof. Our public safety will tell you that. They told me that. I couldn't believe it. But why? And that's why. It has to do with the border, but it also has to do with what product are they dealing in. They're dealing in illegitimate cannabis. If you want to drive out dark forces, what do? You bring light. You bring a legitimate market that drives out the illegitimate market. It just happens through market forces. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents in on that. I've been a supporter of this. I'm a supporter of the motion, obviously. I'm a supporter of the industry for those various reasons. I also have a free market approach as well that I support, but that's a discussion for another time. But what I don't support is I don't support being unprepared. And I know we're going to have to deal with this, and if we don't prepare, we are going to find ourselves bargaining from a weakened position, and we are going to find ourselves back on our heels, and I don't think that's a responsible place for us as policymakers and legislators to be in. So I would strongly encourage a yes vote. As Trustee Joseph said, just look at the menu, at least know what you're dealing with. You don't have to do anything with it, or you can simply vote no on the ordinance if it comes in front of you, if we find ourselves in that position. But this is not voting for marijuana. This is voting to put in place the options that, well, not put in place, but this is to take a look at the options, and this is to be prepared for if we are faced with this situation, and I believe that we will be. Thanks.
Any further comments from the board? I have a motion from Clerk Barry, supported by Trustee Joseph, to approve item F. Clerk Barry, would you call the roll?
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
No.
Trustee Vosberg.
No.
Treasurer Elliott.
No.
Supervisor Kirsten.
Aye.
Item 8A is the addendum. And that is to authorize the township supervisor to utilize a public safety vehicle for township purposes until such time as the board appoints a new public safety director.
So moved.
Support.
Mr. Supervisor,
Motion.
I'm sorry.
Motion by Trustee Joseph, support by Trustee Anderson. Discussion from the board.
Yeah, as I alluded to some of this in the liaison comment, this came out of discussions with public safety captains, our fire chief. The vehicle is not a vehicle that needs to be purchased. It was simply the vehicle that was utilized by the public safety director. It requires no additional resources to acquire. The agenda item was written in such a way to reflect the way that it was used, which is township purposes. And again, we've had, as I mentioned, two very, very difficult scenes that involve homicides. They involve both departments. I think it's critical from an evidentiary preservation standpoint to have our public safety director there. I don't think that we should close the door on the talents and history and experience of our current supervisor, though they are seen by this board as more appropriately utilized as a township supervisor. We don't have to say goodbye to the wisdom and knowledge that his law enforcement career has provided us. He was our first and only public safety director, and I think when we found ourselves in a situation of having to replace a supervisor 6 months into a 4-year commitment, we took unprecedented steps to utilize talent that we had right here, and we shouldn't close the door on what they left behind. We can still do both until such time that we work through a long-term solution with a new public safety director, and this motion and agenda item captures that. It will stay in place until such time that we have a new public safety director, and that this role of management of scenes and so forth can be taken on appropriately by the person we put in charge of public safety. We're looking for unique solutions to unique problems. This does that. There is no additional cost to the township, and it sends a message to the residents of what we said when we appointed Supervisor Kirsten, that there will be no stone unturned when it comes to looking at ways to keep our community safe. And this does that with no additional cost. So again, I'll stop belaboring the point and just ask for your support on this agenda item. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Public comments? Any comments from the public?
Mr.
Trustee Vosper.
Thank you. I don't support this. I didn't know that was something that anyone wanted to have. And the reason I don't support it is we have people in place who are acting now in the role as, for the public safety, specifically police in this particular situation. And those people have been properly trained. We appreciate the work that they've done, and we appreciate the work that the former public safety director, who is now our supervisor, has done to put those people, make them be people who are competent and able to do what they do. I can understand perhaps sometimes there's need or desire to have the prior person there for purposes of expertise, but I'm not sure why they need a vehicle, a separate vehicle, to do that. And I think one of the words used was unprecedented, and I think voting to do this is also unprecedented, and I don't think that we would want to, I don't think we should be using a vehicle that's meant for police work for the supervisor. And then I guess a question to, I'm not sure who, finance isn't here, but do we allow, have any of the full-time elected officials been provided cars in the past? Does anyone know?
Yes, I know. No, the answer is no.
Okay, thank you.
But just to answer further your question, there was no need. There was no need, and in fact, I spoke to the full-time official to my left who addressed this issue when it came up on a previous board. There was no need. And so the answer to your question in terms of unprecedented, yes, but have we harvested a public safety director from public safety to be our supervisor in the history of the township? Do you ever recall, and you've lived here, raised children here, has that ever been the case?
That's not the issue. The issue is...
Well, you said unprecedented.
Yes, it's correct. That's unprecedented.
Okay.
But giving a car to a supervisor, a full-time elected official, is also unprecedented. That's my point of using the word unprecedented. So that's all. I don't want to hear more about it.
Okay. I know that's your practice, and so when you decide you don't want to hear anymore, that's fine, and you did it tonight successfully for 3 minutes, but you're not going to do it to me. You said unprecedented, and you had questions. I answered your question, and then you got offended and argumentative. It's not businesslike, and I would watch that, but the unprecedented nature that we find ourselves in tonight is something that I did look at, and I did look at providing a vehicle to
Mr. Supervisor, do I still have the floor?
I thought you asked a question, I answered it, and I was continuing.
My apologies. Trustee Vosberg, please continue.
I had a question. The question was answered. I didn't want to hear any more things told to me, thinking they were answering my question. My question was answered.
I thought you were in a huff down there. I apologize. Yeah, I thought so.
Clerk Barry?
Was she done?
Treasurer Elliott.
So there's this back and forth. Trustee Vosberg had the floor. She asked the question. Trustee Joseph offered an answer, but as the trustee and the motion maker, but she continued to have the floor. So when Trustee Joseph goes further than answering the question, then
Point of order.
we go beyond that.
Is this slow motion
And yes,
replay? This has nothing to do
every
with the
time I
motion.
speak, I'm interrupted, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that every time I speak, I'm interrupted, and I understand what we're talking about.
Point of order, point of order, point of order, Mr. Supervisor, point of order.
Mr. Supervisor, may I
I'm waiting to be heard on the point of order.
may I continue, Mr. Supervisor?
Pardon me?
May I continue?
Please.
Thank you. So this is a highly unusual situation. It's something that was brought to the board here tonight. And so when we don't actually have the ability to ask the folks that, for the research that aren't here, those people aren't here, then we get into these kinds of situations. And not allowing deliberation or due diligence yet again, I'm a little disappointed to hear that this comes up like this tonight. It is, I'm wondering if there's like a little bit of conflict. I thought we had appointed a public safety director, but apparently we've just appointed a police chief. And I guess clarity for myself and the public. It's very hard motion to support under these circumstances. I have never heard of this. I don't know of it, and it's problematic in my opinion. So unfortunately, I can't see how I can support this until there's further research done. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just for clarification, the point of order was on the replay. That was what I was asking for, but we got back to the motion, and so I'm okay. But this is not an appointment of a vehicle for a full-time official. This is not a perk for a full-time official. This is a response to a situation that I had and nobody in this community had any control over, and that is 6 months into a 4-year term, the guy quits. We appoint the public safety director, we bring him over from public safety, and I can appreciate a unprecedented, and I can appreciate more research. My concern, and after talking with Trustee Demink at the swearing in on Tuesday, was the practice typically is you have somebody at the scene. We brought our public safety team together in an unprecedented way because it's what we had to do to save police and fire. So we brought them together because that's what the problems dictated. We harvested our public safety director, and we are now bifurcating our public safety team, and we have a police and fire operations, and I'm not in favor of that for too long. And the thing that keeps it together is the public safety director, which we are now actively engaged in the process, and Director Duchesne and Supervisor Kirsten are fighting no harder and want nothing more to happen more quickly than that to occur, that a full-time public safety director be in place. What is also unprecedented is 2 homicides in the same weekend. So when you look at the scene and you hear from people in the prosecutor's office talking about preserving evidence, when you engage the fire department who is out there at the scene because you have a corpse, and then you have investigators, and you have detectives, and you have people being pulled from the scene to bring people back for an interrogation, you have an unprecedented problem. And if you have the means, without increasing your cost, to take a vehicle that's otherwise parked and ask the guy at the top, would you put a little more on your plate? And by the way, we're not paying you anymore. But your public safety expertise, your decades in law enforcement could have provided some level of supervision and direction and assures the public that our scene is preserved. It's a small price. You're talking about a vehicle that's sitting. So I know gas is expensive, I realize that. But to have the former public safety director volunteer, he didn't come to the board and say, hey, if you're going to give me more assignments, I'd like more money. But by the way, take your personal vehicle to the scene, and if your grandkid's in the back, just, the car seat, don't worry. That's just preposterous. So we can analyze this all you want. We can go to neighboring communities and we can poll their fleet vehicles, and we can get an assessment from everybody that's ever driven a car in a full, and then we can see how many more fires or homicides or areas where our public safety director could have simply got into a public safety vehicle and made sure the scene was orderly and preserved, and the 2 crafts are working together, police and fire. When you have 2 branches doing the public safety and you don't have a public safety director, maybe those are the scenes that we might want to have.
Mr. Supervisor, let's call a vote.
Support.
Oh, yeah, I love it. I love it.
Motion to call vote. Motion to call the question. Any comments from the board or comments from the public?
I'm sorry. This is Chris Aiello. Chris Aiello, Compass Point. I can't even imagine. In the private sector, we would never get Brad Kirsten to work for me for $90,000 a year. I can't find a Brad Kirsten to work for me at $90,000 a year because he's overqualified. Come on, guys. We're fortunate to have who he is. We're talking about a car, a couple $100 a month with our budget. We're not a small rural community. Are you kidding me? We're sitting here debating this? Come on, man. Let's get into 2021, everyone. The guy's doing all this work and we pay him $90,000 or something like that a year? Come on. He's worth double that in the private sector. Let's get to where we need to be. All this debate and discussions over some of these issues is ridiculous. Give the guy a car, the position. It's not him. Give the position a car. Bring ourselves up to date. I couldn't hire somebody like that to work for me for the amount of money that we're paying him. And he's got kids, family, car. It's nothing. We all know that. Everybody on this board knows that. It's ridiculous.
John Spica, 53978 Connor Drive. Trustee Joseph, thank you for bringing this to the board tonight. This is what I call thinking out of the box. That's how we saved the police department. That's how you and along with a few other board members with Treasurer LaFata were able to save police and fire. Treasurer Elliott talks about this being problematic. She needs research on this. My God, there's no research that we need to do on this. This is common sense. And unfortunately, in society today, a lot of people lack common sense. Supervisor Kirsten, I agree with Mr. Aiello. The talents that you bring to this township at $99,000 that we're paying you, you're worth triple that. In my opinion. We've had an unprecedented situation with 2 homicides over the weekend. We need the expertise on the scene, and we should give him the vehicle to get to the scene. I mean, we're looking at a vehicle that the township already owns, we've already purchased it, but yet, when it comes to wasting taxpayers' money on this board, all of a sudden, you know, nobody talks about that. Give the man the car, and let's proceed and get this over with. Thank you.
Michelle Wilson, Mayor of the 52860 Muirfield Drive. I'm not necessarily for it or against it. I just want to make sure that I understand if we are providing the car, where is the money for the purchase of the car coming from? Is it already in a fleet? How will the gasoline be paid for? The insurance be paid for? I just want some further research. As Ms. Elliott said, I just want to make sure, I'm not sure I'm clear on where the money is coming from. And again, one of the pieces is that, not again that he is deserving or not deserving, it's just that I'm somewhat confused too. When we put in place Supervisor Kirsten, I was under the impression that we had someone in place as well that would take over his responsibilities. And then I want to understand at what point, how long will it take necessarily to get someone up to speed so he doesn't have the car anymore? So I'm just confused. So I just wanted to have a point of clarity, that's all.
Bring it back up to the board. Motion to call the question. Clerk Barry. Clerk Barry, we call a roll to call the question.
Trustee Domingue.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Treasurer Elliott. The motion is to call the question.
Kathy. Right, right.
Aye. Supervisor Kirsten.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Motion, could you read the existing motion?
Sure. The motion is to authorize the township supervisor to utilize a public safety vehicle for township purposes until such time as the board appoints a new public safety director.
Clerk Berry, could you call the roll?
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
No.
Treasurer Elliott.
No.
Supervisor Kirsten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item,
Mr. Supervisor, just a point of clarity, I don't want to have a problem. I would like to know from the attorney, is Mr. Kirsten allowed to vote on that issue? I realize there could be some personal, and if he's voting on it, he recuses himself, and I think it's a 6-panel vote. Or is there a differing opinion there?
First of all, the vote's complete.
Okay.
And if he would not have been allowed to vote, I would have already given the opinion that he could not. I was mindful of that question coming up, and I did not see that this is a conflict question. There's no, typically a board member will not vote on a question that comes before the board if he or she has some pecuniary interest in the outcome of the vote. I don't see any. There's no financial benefit to the supervisor. It's more of a pain in the behind, quite frankly, than it is a benefit. But certainly there's no economic benefit to him. He would have had to request that the board allow him to abstain, and there would have had to have been a motion carried to do that. I don't see any conflict, and so his vote is legit, in my view.
There's no economic benefit to getting a car from the township?
I don't see it.
any further discussion?
Sorry about that, thank you.
Item 9, public comments, 5-minute time limit.
Again, Chris Aiello, I'm sorry, again, Chris Aiello. So with Miss Supervisor Kirsten stepping down from the Department of, from Public Safety, so then we have to appoint someone, and is that how it works? Are we appointing somebody? Okay. And so I move right now that Franks gets the job. If you've known Officer Franks for as long as I have, I grew up with him, and I want to take a roll call right now and vote on him. So my vote of confidence is with him. I've known him since he's been a child. I've known his brother. I've known his entire family. We hung out in high school. But more important to that is if you get to know the man, his personality is contagious. He's a kind individual. He'd be a great asset to our community. He'd be a great captain. He's just a good person, and he's kind-hearted. And I think police officers are getting a bad rap in these days about their personalities and characteristics on national TV. He is not that person. He cares about the community, and he cares about people, and he's kind. And so if you all know what we all mean by that is that when he rolls up onto a position or a situation, we need someone that's level-headed, kind, and willing to listen, and open-minded. And he fits each and every one of those categories. So as I retire tonight from this podium, I'd like to take a share of hands. Who wants to vote in? Frank. Thanks.
Well, I just had 2 short comments here. I'll vote for Franks. I like Franks. You know, I'll take a vote. I'll put both hands up. Franks knows what he's doing. So, Franks, you got my vote. That's all I'm saying. Okay, the next thing is I just wanted to also commend our outstanding Chesterfield Fire Department. Why? Because I had a fight with a lamb chop last night, and I was embarrassed, and they showed up so quickly. So I just wanted to say, give a round of applause for them because they were outstanding, and I thank you very much. And I was willing to pay a fine, but they said, it's you and Michelle. We hope you enjoy your dinner and learn how to cook. Thank you.
Good evening, Township Board and Chesterfield Township residents. My name is John Spica. I reside at 53978 Connor Drive. Trustee Vosberg, yesterday I emailed you a question regarding agenda item 7C. My question was in regards to the agenda request for installation of new LED pathway lighting for the Salt River Nature Center. I wanted to know, what are the operational budget requirements to operate and maintain the Weber Paddle Park, Salt River Nature Center, and Brandenburg Park for the budgeted years 21 and upcoming 22? Trustee Vosberg, your direction to look at the 2021 budget does not answer the question for the added, again, the key word was added operational costs for the Weber Paddle Park and the Salt River Nature Center. There is also thousands of dollars being spent every day on materials for Brandenburg that has been posted in every bill run for the last 4 months, plus the consistent facilities and operation labor also presented at Brandenburg for the last 4 months. If you guys passed it, these lights will add additional costs to a budget in deficit already. Supervisor Kirsten, welcome aboard and congratulations. I'm sure tonight was quite the experience. Supervisor Kirsten, you have a tough task ahead of you. For starters, the former supervisor, Dan Acciavatti, left the township with a 2021 projected general fund deficit of a negative $2,068,678.07. The projected 22 general fund budget deficit is a negative $1,322,773.36. The former supervisor left before all the bills came due. The former supervisor spent money and wasted money in this township like a drunken sailor. I'm not against spending money, but I'm against wasting taxpayer money on silly projects that the majority of Chesterfield residents don't want. Our township municipal parking lot is in dire need of immediate repair. We talk about safety all the time. That's one of the biggest safety concerns out there. The township municipal building has been in need in repairs for years. When I came to the municipal building last year to ask Treasurer LaFata a question, there was a leak in the ceiling that had been leaking for quite a while. There was no money to repair the leak in the ceiling, but yet the former supervisor had allocated thousands of tax dollars to be spent at Brandenburg and Weber Park. As a township, we need to put our residents in this township first. We really need to focus on what the township priorities should be for the residents and abandon all these silly projects that waste taxpayers' money, like the trash cart program. Chesterfield lost over $69,000 last year. It's a loser for the residents and the taxpayers of Chesterfield. Let's focus in on what the true meaning of best practices really is about and put that into action. A few of our board members like to use coined phrases: proactive, safety, neighboring communities. If they put their focus in, like they did with this silly APO and censoring the residents on being able to speak at this podium, they would focus in on issues like the township having no insurance coverage. So if a worker brings a weapon to work, the residents don't bear the responsibility of being sued because we're not able to be insured. Then the municipal building wouldn't be a hot mess where we had an individual actually fall out there. We wouldn't have a deficit of 21 over $2 million that we're running in this township. And if we saw anything tonight, we saw a certain group of individuals and board members that are totally out of touch with the residents and inept and shouldn't even be sitting at the board. A prime example of that was when we talked about the censorship here at the podium, when we talked about the cannabis committee. Those are just common sense things. So obviously, this board, in my opinion, not the entire board, just a certain segment, 3 certain individuals need to be changed out on the board. So that's my personal opinion. I wish you the best of luck. You've got a lot of hard work ahead of you. I know you're the right individual that can get the job done, and I know you're going to get it done. Thank you, and good night.
All right, so just briefly, I want to say that the votes taken tonight, I think you got to keep an eye out for what the residents will have to say for the foreseeable future. There was a lot of animosity going on the board tonight, and I think that very unfortunate with the supervisor's first meeting that it was very contentious. But aside from that, one thing I would like to ask the clerk, with regards to the upcoming election and then future elections, for the people who live in Precinct 1, with the situation with the school district closing down Sugarbush Elementary, will that still remain the voting location for this upcoming election and future elections, or opening for the days which the elections are held? Primary in general, or is there going to be a movement to a different location for those of us living in Precinct 1? Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? I'll bring it back up to the board. Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. This is our first meeting with our new supervisor. Dream of dreams, I thought. We have a new era here, cooperation, whatever. And it seems there's a spirit existing in this building that some things won't go away or resolve themselves. APO 04-2018. I can't recall an item in front of this board, except when we were looking at issues with contracts with some of our departments that had the type of support and public outpouring that I heard tonight. That would be nullified if this APO passed. You could either talk at the beginning or at the end. You had your time reduced to 3 minutes. At least you got something yet. Keep your eyes open. See if it shows up here again. I don't think some people want to hear what you have to say as their bosses. I want to thank every speaker that got up at that time, and I made my remark earlier. This was a tremendous exercise at civics. You paid attention in class. It showed. Thank you. A long discussion about having our planning commission, township planning consultant to prepare, review, and recommend to the township board ad nauseum about marijuana. It's not an endorsement. It's just being prepared for it. It does not endorse grow operations or whatever. I learned a lot about the Volstead Act, gangs, illegal marijuana, and all kinds of things that had, I don't think it had anything to do with this discussion. I think it was kind of bath salts and gas stations and how they changed. It was very informative, but it didn't address what we were here to vote yes or no on. Simple as that. And the final thing, second last thing, I won't mention your name, Josh, but my heart goes out to you. You're doing a great job trying to keep things afloat as far as the physical plants that this township owns. We now have the Salt River Nature Center, new lighting out there. Maybe those gangs will be out there. Who knows? I hope the wisdom of this board, as has been going on the last 4 years or 4.5, that's one of the issues I had, is when we acquire these things, they look wonderful, they look good. We take them off the tax rolls, the township owns them. The township has to provide the security in perpetuity. And there's so many things that need to be addressed, and I know that you were torn in many which ways. I'm in no way throwing you under the bus there. One of the speakers talking about crumbling parking lots that the township owns, that are priority. Tremendous work that was done on a bridge over a Meldrum Creek for the middle school south. It's never been finished. It was done, it sits there, and probably in a few years it'll be rusting out again. Preventive maintenance. Brandenburg Park, another, lighting there. Trustee Joseph talked about it. There's so many things that we should shore up before we blow the budget here on all these wonderful things. And finally, Mr. Kirsten, I felt you did well in your baptism of fire, and I'll let it go there. I hope everyone has a good night. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'd like to echo some of Trustee Anderson's comments. Great job tonight. You had, you know, cannabis, this APO on our board rules. I think this is about the 4th or 5th time. It really is truly remarkable how many times we've chewed this one up, and I was really grateful to see a new face, a new resident, come to the podium and say, I got a little flavor of it last go around, and I'm seeing some things, and all I can say is please keep coming and bring a neighbor, because the more people that show up, the more the nonsense goes away. It really does. I'm appreciative to Trustee Demink for his infusion of the 3-minute compromise. It got us all a little bit closer, and it was perfectly timed, and it took us in a direction that hopefully we can, you know, live with it a little bit easier. There was you know, the definition of compromise. We all leave not having gotten fully everything that we wanted, and maybe that's the way it should have gone. I'm just always a fan of hearing from the residents as much and as often as we can. The votes that you had to, and debates that you had to preside over tonight, Mr. Supervisor, the word used unprecedented. I think you handled it extremely well for your first go out. I'm disappointed you were put in a position to have to vote on whether or not you would hear from your residents or when they could talk and for how long, and you know, I just think that was a terrible setup for you. But the conversation about needing analysis to look at this vehicle, tremendously disappointing, unprecedented. Yeah, we're in unprecedented territory for sure. And I think meeting unprecedented problems with unprecedented solutions is appropriate. And so when you do the ROI on the price of the vehicle that we already own that's parked, and you get 40 years or so of expertise, 35, for the price of you know, some fuel, and it shoulders and supports an already very competent department. I wasn't proposing that if Supervisor Kirsten weren't at the scene that something, you know, unforgivable would have happened, but there's an easier way to go. There's a supportive way to go. And if you have somebody in the department, in the organization with a wealth of experience, again, an unprecedented level of experience, to not utilize that at a scene where you have what could potentially be, and to be quite honest, I do recall, not the last two supervisors, but from 2000 to 2008, I do recall a guy who would show up at the scene. I do recall that guy. If there was a flood going on, or if there was something happening in the township. So it's not, you know, beyond the pale that the supervisor goes out to a place that could dramatically impact the residents. And I would argue that a homicide, with most of your command officers interviewing different suspects, the one shooting I read in the paper had 3 individuals that were involved in gunplay. And how do you take witness statements, and how do you, we got 2 cars out, so you're calling in people, then you got the fire department engaged, because you have a body at the scene. You know, so to have a supervisor at the scene is I mean, a supervisor that was also your only public safety director, it isn't any encroachment on the leadership that is in place now. It's just an addendum for so few financial, you know, the cost is so minuscule compared to the, you know, the ROI. The numbers is it's ridiculous that we had that much discussion and research. What do you got to research? You had 2 homicides. You had 2 homicides. You got a unprecedented crime scene twice in the same weekend. That's actionable. That's actionable. You freeze up on something like that. I mean, I don't know. We got to walk and chew gum at the same time. This was an easy one. This was a layup. But here we are debating it for, however long we debated it. The issue that Trustee Anderson raised with regard to the lighting, I want to be clear. I wasn't voting against the lights or the idea that lights make the pathway safer. I'm just so sick of all of these projects with no closed loops. All of these things that they generate, nice pictures in the paper, and then I know because I've talked to them. I got residents in this audience that walk at Brandenburg Park shoreline every day, and to walk past, half of the lights are out. But good news is they're brightly lit in the middle of the afternoon, because we don't have any kind of timer system out there. And when you go to the guy who's got 15 things on his plate and he's being drugged from pillar to post, and you go, well, why are these lights going in? Why aren't they going off? And he's coming to the podium and talking about the next set of lights. And I appreciate that there's certain things that preceded him. But I've been here for a bit, and the same engineering crew that recommends these projects, that lay them out, you're now saying, we got unmarked wires and DTE can't find this, and it was haphazardly, well, who was running the show then? Because it's the same cast of characters that we come up and we approve big fat engineering contracts for. Who's laying out these projects that are so incompetently done? So I was really much more in favor of doing some things that we know are actionable, like that giant chunk out of the ramp that's in front of this building still, Supervisor Kirsten, and watching a video of a guy literally being flung out of his wheelchair at the end of that ramp, comes in to pay a bill, leaves, catches just the ADA recommended amount of speed going down the ramp to get to the bottom and go into a divot, and then literally catapulted from his chair and is lifted in a really despicable and humiliating way. Passerbys summon people from the building, and you can see on the video they run out and kind of ham-handedly put the guy back in the chair. Proud guy, independent guy. He's got a disabled van with the lift gate down. He's taking care of his own business, and we can't even provide him a sidewalk. That was 2 years ago this July that divot was there, and it's still here. And tonight we approved a couple $1,000s that could at least fill that thing in. I mean, we could fill it in with shredded APOs. We could fill it in and keep the guy safe. But we talked about safety tonight in justification for another $2,000. And hey, it's only $1,100 because DTE is going to foot the bill on some of it, and isn't that great? And if you don't think people have safety? I don't know the comparison, but we could do better. Speaking of DTE, a couple years ago, Trustee Anderson and I were talking with residents, and the township animal is the portable generator. So I don't know of anybody in the township that doesn't have a portable generator or wishes that they did, because the amount of outages that are unstorm related, it's just, some idiot hits a pole, knocks out a transformer, and it takes out half the township. There's no redundancies in place. And so Trustee Anderson and I were talking with residents and compiling a list of people who were just very dissatisfied with the service that were provided by DTE. I'm going to focus on the windshield and not the rear view, but we came forward with a push to go and sit down with DTE and ask and present some of the stories that we had gathered. We are not the official spokespeople for the Township Board. The Township Board speaks primarily through the supervisor. That's the head of the organization. And at that time, I think the belief was that DTE was, I think extremely confident was the answer we got in the service that was being provided. And so there really wasn't much in the way of energy to ask for that grid space to be looked at. Talked with Supervisor Kirsten. He was kind of lounging around on his first few days, not really much going on in the township for him. I called him up about DTE, and he actually said that he had had a conversation with Trustee Vosberg about the same thing. So perhaps there's some room there. We can work together and take a look at what kind of service we're being provided. Last thing I wanted to touch on, Mr. Supervisor, I am very impressed with your work this week, and it's literally been a week since we were in this boardroom and we all witnessed your swearing in, and the amount of things that have come to your office and the hours that you're putting in and the willingness to say, yeah, I have no problem going out to the scene, but you know, like I really don't want to go out there with my grandson's car seat in the back. I think there's got to be a more appropriate way, and so taking on that extra duty, again, I'm surprised it wasn't supported more vigorously tonight, but by any stretch, I thank you for your dedication and your commitment. One of the speakers talked about the salary. Just so you know, the Public Safety Director is our highest paid level of personnel in the township. It's roughly $30,000 more than the supervisor job. So you can see the commitment. I see the commitment, and I believe bone deep in this individual, and I'm proud to be on the board with him. I'm proud that the era of big government is over. I'm proud that he's unafraid to take on a number of things that have just been off the rails here while we you know, create all these great photo ops. Somebody's got to be responsible for the bills, and I'm proud of him, and I can see already the things that he's doing to put in place. The last two board meetings have ended with advice for you on everything from toxicity to a lovely analogy about a cap full of oil destroying an entire freshwater system. I think Trustee Anderson and I have played the role of the oil in that analogy, but whatever. The recommendation and advice I would give to you, just a few points. I would ask you to continue what you started this week and reach out to your employees and talk with your department heads and get a feel for what is truly going on here. End the waste. Look for ways to continue to bring us together. And some of those are partnering with the people that pay the bills and some of the developers that work here. So I say to you, don't shut down a development by forcing a developer to jump through unnecessary hoops. Bring forward a performance and maintenance bond on property they already own. Don't close a fire station and let your board members hear about it from the IAFF union president. Consult with us, talk with us, share with us. Please don't enter into an agreement with a neighboring community to consider fire protection without letting your board know, because when we hear about it from the board members in the neighboring community, it erodes trust and cooperation. Don't negotiate to put a cell tower in somebody's backyard. Don't negotiate with neighboring counties or cities or municipalities to put in construction of roads or lights or without talking to your board. Without committing township resources, you should talk to the board, and I would ask that you do that. When residents are speaking, even when we don't agree with them, I would ask you, please don't lean back in your chair and put headphones in and laugh at them disrespectfully. Listen to the ones that are yelling the most, and hopefully you'll hear something that might be of worth. As I said when Ms. Merriweather spoke, as steel sharpens steel, it is an opposition that we might learn some things about ourselves. Last I will say is, in the same way that we were told DTE is outside of our control, I think some things might be within our control with a strong leader. So when we get invited to the table to talk about the F-35, don't take anybody else's word for it, Mr. Supervisor. Get to the table or send somebody you trust that is an elected official to represent the people of Chesterfield. When you negotiate a piece of sewer pipe and somebody tells you that it's an $1.8 million in disrepair, and it turns out to be double that, asked our attorney to take a look at it first before going into the room and making nice with people that you might need in your political career. And I don't think that's something I have to worry about or Trustee Anderson has to worry about. But we can come together with our residents and we can talk to the Department of Roads about the deplorable conditions at 23 Mile Road where people are losing their axle and calling and complaining. We can collectively go and say this isn't acceptable. And yeah, it might make people a little uncomfortable, but we can advocate for our residents when we're talking to Selfridge, when we're talking to the Department of Roads, when we're talking to the state. We don't simply say to our residents, that's beyond our control, call the Department of Roads. So the advice could go on and on and on forever. I think a couple of other people have referenced the ridiculous garbage cart program, the departments that were never created. I think Treasurer Elliott, I believe, even had lunch with him recently, and if you don't know Mr. Ellis, go back and look at what Mr. Ellis did with one administrative assistant. Supervisor Acciavatti, Supervisor Kirsten, you have departments that never even existed under that leadership. And not only do those departments exist, but they have assistants who have assistants and titles you can't even imagine. So the task ahead of you is and the road is long. I'm glad that you're there. You have my support 100%, and I think you have the support of the people. At least we heard from some of them tonight that are very, very happy you're in that seat. And I know nobody more than me. Maybe Trustee Anderson, but great job tonight. Thank you.
Trustee Domingue.
This is going to be a lot shorter than David's, I'll guarantee you that. I don't talk that long. A lot has happened around here since 4th of July weekend, especially with 2 homicides a half-mile apart. When Supervisor Acciavatti texted me first thing in the morning, and I go, really? And then when I got the next one on Monday morning, it was like, are we talking about the same thing? I knew he was up, so I gave him a call. But thanks to everybody at the PD, command officers, patrolmen, detectives, evidence techs, and the guys on the fire department that responded. I know it was a hell of a weekend. You guys saw a lot. Captain Franks, Captain McNair. Looks like you guys got some work cut out for you, the way things have been happening, along with the other issue the other day at Chesterfield Road in Gratiot. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to the DPW for placing the generators and for assisting with all the cleanup after the storm last week, Tuesday. It definitely got a little nasty that night. Supervisor and I, you weren't even sworn in 8 hours and the sky broke loose on you. So good luck. I wish you the best. Those of you that criticize me, hey, that's your choice. Mr. Speaker, you ran for office. You know, you've said a lot, but, you know, the voters put who's ever up here is up here. Mr. Aiello, you ran for office. You know, I made it, you didn't, that's who the voters picked. I did my campaign, you did whatever style your campaign is. So I'm up here for 3.5 more years, and I make the decisions the best way I can see them. I'm not going to throw mud at you, Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to throw mud at you. I probably could, but I don't play that game. And I haven't came at you yet, nor will I. I play by a different game, and the people that know me, the ones that have been around here for a long time, know the way I play. So, people don't like me? Well, I'm here for 3.5 more years. You want to recall me? Have at it. Have at it. I've been around this township a long time, before I got elected. I've been a long-time resident. I do the best damn job I can. And if you don't like it, I'm sorry, but I have my right to my opinion, and I have people that I listen to. There's a certain group that come here every day and criticize us or criticize individuals. I don't agree with personal attacks. You want to address us for things that done, but personal attacks are wrong. And I've already talked to Supervisor Kirsten about it. You want to address things on issues, but personal attacks on any board member, any of the 7 of us, I disagree with. It's a place of business, and we're here to do business. That's all I have to say tonight. Thank you.
Trustee Glassberg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I echo the comments that the previous speaker said about our employees and appreciate all the assistance that we're given in the police department, fire, and public works. We did have a busy week. I also want to recognize our new supervisor. Thank you for a meeting well run. We've had quieter meetings, but I appreciated this meeting because the discussion was there. You allowed the discussion to be held, and that's all I had asked for, and that's what happened. And I appreciate it. And I also appreciate the fact that we were able to discuss it and come up with a compromise that was acceptable to most of us. And I don't want to continue going on, but I'm giving a personal shout out to my husband, thanking him for being my husband for the last 58 years today.
Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. This past Saturday night, my 14-year-old son and his best friend were out at Brandenburg Park and fishing. And they wanted to fish, so we got there at 6:30, 7 o'clock, and they enjoyed. I sat in the parking lot because I did not want to stand out there in the wind and the weather and all that fun stuff. But I let those boys fish, and they didn't have any problems seeing. So that was a lot of fun. It was fun watching them go ahead and enjoy the stuff at the park. And I think it's fairly well known. I am a mom. I have 3 wonderful children I'm extremely proud of. I have a granddaughter who I absolutely adore, and she told her mom the other day when I was given too much treats, and her mom said, "Come on, she's a toddler, you're giving her too much sugar," and my 3-year-old granddaughter said, "But that's what grandmas do, right?" And so I say that because those are residents. Those kids are residents, and so when I did see this on the agenda, the cannabis, the question about that and the marijuana, those are the first people I go to and ask, how does that make you feel? Because you're going to inherit these decisions. And so to say I'm out of touch when I have a 14-year-old and a 17-year-old, a 26-year-old, and a 3-year-old granddaughter is a little bit, probably not accurate. They don't want that in their community. So as I've spoken before, I live in a subdivision right behind Viviano's flower shop, and my kids have seen a lot in that area. They don't want it in their home. That's how they feel. But that's an emotional decision. Okay, that's an emotional conversation. And so when I say I would like to send back to committee and to hear the arguments, and I realize that those arguments are 2 or 3 years old, so let's update them. Let's have some facts. Is that fair? Yes. And Mr. Aiello, you and I have spoken before, and I have listened to your side, and I do understand your point of view. Don't necessarily always agree with it, and I do have my own information and facts, but I don't know that this was the time or place for me to share that, because what we were debating on and deliberating on was a different conversation. So I would have liked to have brought that back to have the conversation and share some data. There was a lot of emotional opinions, all right, and I like data. At the last board meeting, our auditors said we had a strong fund balance. There seems to be some misunderstanding and misconception on how a budget works, and I think we'll clear that up at the next meeting. So in the past, we have had a supervisor, a police chief, and a fire chief. Am I correct? We have. We've had that structure before. No, I believe that we have had that structure before. And so I understand that we've never had anybody using a vehicle before, even under that structure. So I wasn't given the opportunity to do the due diligence, which I do like to do. And the argument to say lots of people serve here that can have jobs elsewhere. And so setting that precedence, which is what we did today, okay, it changes the course of things, and that's where I see it being problematic, and that is why I did not support that. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Mr. Supervisor, personal privilege to amend my comments.
Yes, I support that. No way you got
It's
married.
way past, I've been married 48 years today, not 58. But it's way past my bedtime, okay? Just saying.
Clerk Barry.
I'm going on the record tonight for the fastest comments unless Supervisor Kirsten beats me out. The only thing that I'd like to address is a very good question. I don't normally address questions from the audience, but it was a very good question that we got regarding precinct polling locations and voting locations. So I'd like to address that at this time. All of the voting locations are the same as they were in 2020. If there are closures or inaccessibility of polling locations, those affected will be notified within 90 days of the election, so there'll be plenty of time for notifications. We do not expect any changes unless the buildings themselves are unserviceable. So the fact that the school district may close them, they will still allow us to use them. We're still under an agreement with them to use those facilities for election purposes. But if that becomes not possible due to, we had that happen over at Chesterfield Elementary, over on 23 Mile where it got sold, and then we had to make changes. So when changes do need to be made, they are published, the affected individuals are notified, and it's done in plenty of time before the election takes place. So everything's status quo for this election, and if a change occurs, you can always check our website, check our Facebook page, or all of our social media. We will make sure to publish it in all of those places. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. I asked for it. Bear with me. I'm going to get better at managing these meetings. I had four comments that I wanted to make tonight that I thought I could do better at, and I don't think I did. I'll go home and review this. Number one, I wanted everybody to be polite. I'm open for debate. I wanted to make sure that it was relevant to the topic, germane, and I wanted no personal attacks. That's where I'm going to live moving forward. Being the township supervisor and then chairing these meetings. I truly believe in that. Trustee Vosberg is a wise politician, has been in this a long time. She deserves respect. She deserves being recognized, and if her opinions are different than yours, debate the fact, debate the topic. And that goes for all the trustees and even myself. I'm willing to talk, debate, meet, but I do want to have some decorum, and I want a different tone. I'd like to achieve a different tone up here on the board. I have a lot to learn, and I said that from day one. The group, the employees, the department heads that I've met with in the last, the transition was actually 3.5 weeks. They're amazing. But there's also, I want to make changes. I want to go in a different direction. There are deficiencies that, yes, operationally, that I see that are noticeable, and I want to work on changing them as a group, not an autonomous leader. Marijuana. Trustee DeBink, you and I are on the same page. 33 years of writing tickets and locking people up for this. Now industry, multi-billion-dollar industry that we are confronted with. I'm using Trustee Joseph's analogy. I don't like what I see on the menu, but I want to look at the menu because I'm in fear of what's coming. The problem is, as everyone has indicated, it is here. It's already here, and we've been dealing with it on law enforcement for a long time. Ms. Merriweather, yeah, that's one of, I think, 22 that we have in this community. They don't belong in residential neighborhoods. I've seen what can happen in a residential neighborhood, and obviously we've dealt with the complaints here for many years. That has to change, and we're working to address that change, as I spoke to you over a month ago. I just don't want to be caught flat-footed, and that was really where my vote came from today. I think we need to turn the page, as was pointed out, look and see what's out there, and then manage it. It doesn't mean that we're in. Public safety process for my replacement is underway. Yes, there are very qualified, capable candidates in the House. That process is underway with the HR director. Obviously, everything of those negotiations come back here to the board. We want to make sure that we have the right process put in place. And we've got two great candidates. We work through that. And we will be moving forward with those conversations in the coming month. The budget comments, yes. If you just look at the numbers on the paper, yes, there appears to be a deficit. In reality, we're not. We're very comfortable, and I trust the Treasury Department. I trust the Finance Department. I trust the Planning Department that I've worked with in the public safety side for a few years, but now in the last 3 weeks diving in immensely. We are very stable, and I'm very comfortable moving forward. Do we need to be prepared again for elements of the economy that are threatening? Absolutely, and we will be. The parking lot. I sent an email out this week. That parking lot conversation I've heard for many months. It is in progress. It is underway. There is a timeline that was released to all the trustees and the public, and that is a hurry-up project. Another comment was made about the township offices here. I went to one of the most senior township employees, and this building needs a severe makeover. Functionally, workspace-wise, technology, all of those things do cost money, but this building needs it. We are working with facilities, trying to recognize some of those deficiencies, and I hope to bring that back to the board in the coming months. Animosity and contentiousness was used tonight. There's no animosity, and I'm not contentious with, I'm not afraid of any opinion that was given up here or position. I truly am not. Doesn't offend me one bit. I knew what I was getting into. It's a lot of work. It was a lot more than I thought, but I'm willing to take it on, and I'm going to take it on. Keep in mind, I'm just filling in this role. I have my own campaign that I have to run in the coming months, and I'm willing to do that also. Communications, one of the biggest things that I did at the Public Safety Department and was communicate. And that's what I intend to improve here in the organization. Again, I'm not afraid of debate. I'm not afraid of being on the wrong side. I'm not afraid of making a decision. But my decision is going to be based in fact and in reality, and what's ultimately, what is the best interest for this township as the supervisor and day-to-day administrator. The vehicle. Never meant and never planned on a vehicle getting any very contentious, although I should have known based on, yes, my experience here. The prior supervisor actually on several occasions made a recommendation that if you can get it, you can use it and do what you can, and I appreciate the support from the board members that offered that. That vehicle, there's a lot of meetings that are held. There's a lot of places to go during the work process, and yes, I still enjoy, and I defer to the full-time individuals, but I still enjoy when a resident calls me and says, there's a tree in my yard, what can you do? I'm going there. There is a fire in the community, I'm going there, even if I'm just standing the side. I will walk up to the chief or the command officer or the police officer command that's there, and I will offer from the outside any help and support that I can give them, even if it means driving to Tim Hortons and buying donuts and coffee. I understand the conflicts with that. I appreciate what the board has done, and again, I will go back to, there's no contentiousness, no animosity. Your opinions and your position is well stated, and I understand it. That being said, I have no further comments. For tonight, I will try and get better at managing the debate up here. That was really my focus tonight, and I will get better, I promise you, moving forward. Our next regular board meeting is July 27th, 2021. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Motion to adjourn, trustee Demink, second by clerk Barry. Meeting closed at